It is 9:03. Time to get this show started. We welcome everyone here today to our City Council meeting. We will begin with prayer this morning. I'll ask Ron Landers to come forward and start us off in an invocation. Good morning, sir. Stand as you are able.
Pray with me if you will, please. Lord God, thank you for today, for the privilege of life and being here. It's such an important occasion, a gathering of elected officials, interested citizens, with a lot that I know is on our hearts, and I'm sure it's on yours as well. And so we come to you asking for great wisdom, for patience, for just understanding as we look at issues that are before us. I pray especially for the city charter and the discussion on that. Pray for just the issues, Lord, even with rain. We thank you that you are good in sending the rain, but even that has created some difficulties for some. And we pray for, again, just your presence here so that under your lordship, this group would know how to lead and how to direct us. And so, Father, we pray, believing that you are going to do that. We ask your blessings in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Grandpa? The pledge this morning will be said by Miss Tegan Self, a 7-year-old, a first grader at Fort Concho Elementary, and she and her granddaddy and I will attempt to do it. Let's look this way, sweetheart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's go to Texas. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you so much. Yes, let's get a picture here. Tegan, let's get a picture with Grandpa.
Yes, I do.
Thank you so very much.
What's a long
Colonel Powell, would you step forward, please, sir?
How are you, Mr. Mayor? Good morning, sir. Good morning to you. Good morning, council.
And this one is something that I love to read. This is a proclamation honoring Colonel Charlie Powell. Colonel Charlie Powell is truly a great leader and an outstanding individual. Colonel Powell's leadership has touched many in the United States of America and San Angelo. Colonel Powell's service includes aircraft commander, instructor pilot with the 84th Air Transport Squadrons and Travis Air Force Base, rescue crew commander at Keflavik Air Force Base, Air Force Commander, Instructor Pilot with the 66th Air Refueling Squadron at England Air Force Base, and Commander of the 3480th Technical Training Wing, Goodfellow Air Force Base, San Angelo Chamber of Commerce, Concho Valley United Way, San Angelo Heart Association, San Angelo Country Club, Downtown Rotary Club, and the Wells Fargo Bank. Colonel Charles Powell has been chosen to be the recipient of the Texas Southwest Council Boy Scouts of America Distinguished Citizen Award for his longtime leadership and contributions to his God, his country, his family, his community, and by living by the 12 points of the Scout Law: trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. The Distinguished Citizens Award will be presented to Colonel Powell by Congressman Mike Conaway of Midland. Now, therefore, I, Dwayne Morrison, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do I hereby proclaim Thursday, May 7, 2015 as Colonel Charles Powell Day. Thank you, sir. You want to make a speech? Make a speech, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council, and thank you, citizens of San Angelo, Texas. I want you to know that it's a high honor for a country boy that grew up in southwest Arkansas and adopted San Angelo, Texas in 1980. We have a caring city, a Christian community, cooperative, and I think you are as grateful as I am for that place they call the river. San Angelo, Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Let's get a picture. Jenny, come forward, and whoever else you want to bring with you. Good morning.
Good morning.
How y'all this morning?
Good.
Hi. On June 11, 2015, animal shelters and rescue groups across the nation will join together to give homeless animals a second chance at a happy life. Animal shelters across the nation are partnering with local rescue groups for special events that market their animals to the public and ask their communities to help them empty the shelter in the best way possible. Whereas dogs, cats, and other animal companions are considered cherished members of our families, and whereas the no-kill movement in the U.S. has successfully implemented new and innovative programs that provide alternatives to mass euthanasia, and whereas life-saving changes will come about only if no-kill programs are embraced and further developed, and whereas June 11 is a national day of no-kill across the country when hundreds of shelters and rescue groups will join forces to create the safest day for shelter animals in U.S. history. The city of San Angelo commends Concho Valley Paws and the San Angelo Animal Shelter for partnering in a truly collaborative spirit and effort to reduce the number of homeless animals euthanized in our community. Therefore, I, Dwayne Morrison, Mayor of the great city of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, June 11th, 2015, as National No-Kill Day. Thank you, Jenny. And you've got the microphone.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Morrison, and I'm really grateful to the City of San Angelo for partnering with us for this event. June 11th is, of course, National No-Kill Day, but we will be having a celebration at our location in Sunset Mall on June 13th, which is Saturday, and we want to invite everyone to come out. We're going to be showcasing shelter pets, and we're just really privileged and honored to be working with the new staff, and we're so very excited to be a part of Rescue right now with all the positive changes, so thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Did you want to speak? Oh, no. Okay. Well, let's get a picture. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Mike, you bringing your entourage with you? Bring them all up. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Hi. Good health is one of life's greatest blessings. Unfortunately, many men take their health for granted. We must encourage men to maintain and improve their health by taking simple, manageable steps such as exercising and eating a balanced diet. Legislation creating National Men's Health Week was signed into law in 1994, and this annual observance provides us with the opportunity to renew our efforts towards addressing this issue. Among the significant risks men face are high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and several types of cancer, including prostate, testicular, lung, and colon cancer. As we prepare to celebrate Father's Day, we encourage all Texas men to recognize the importance of seeking preventive, timely, and appropriate medical care. Let all of us, both men and women, remain mindful of the important role preventive medical care can have in our lives and the lives of our loved ones. Esperanza Health and Dental Centers will be in our community to promote men's health throughout the entire month of June and will host a men's health fair on June 19th to 15th. Therefore, I, Dwayne Morrison, the Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of June 15 through June 21, 2015 as Men's Health Week in San Angelo, Texas. Together, we can make a difference. Mike,
thank you, sir.
Make a speech.
All right. Here, ladies. Yes. There's not much more that I could say than what the proclamation said. It really says it all. There are some statistics I'd like to share with you, actually just one, that I think is really telling of today's, our society today. In 1920, in the United States, women lived an average of 1 year longer than men did. Today, in the United States, men die 5 years before women do on average. That says something about how men have yet to buy into the healthcare system. 100% of women will seek primary care for their annual exams, far less than men do. When you compare them side by side, there's no comparison. So, we talk about what is the weaker gender or the weaker sex, whatever you want to call it. For every 115 males that are conceived, only 100 women are conceived. the same time, females. So who's the weakest? I mean, if you got to have more to just survive. So, anyways, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I appreciate it very much.
We have a gift for you.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Let me give
talk
you,
about
we
that.
want to give you a
Talk
gift.
about it.
Okay, so we have a blue ribbon. We have a blue ribbon that we want to give all the men here today. We want to start with our council members. We want to thank Lucy for coming out for National Women's Health Week, and we walked, and we're going to be doing that again all over the city of San Angelo, June 19th. Put on your walking shoes, guys. Form a team. There's no wrong way to do it. If you want to walk with us, you can walk with us. But we had 12 teams for women's, and we want to double that for the men's. We want to have 24. And just walk 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something. I used to watch Mike change his shoes and go for a walk around there, and I thought, what's he doing? What's the boss doing back there in the back of the alley? He'd go for a walk. And so we started doing that at all of our sites. We've got noon walkers and morning walkers. So we just want to encourage you. That day is Blue Out Day. If you go to the website, and I'm going to give you some information, wear blue in observation of National Men's Health Week. And we've got a gift to give you for that. Okay? Thanks.
And I have an idea there will be no snacks. Am I right? Come here, Mike. We're going to take a picture. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Are there going to be snacks?
Yeah, well, it might be, but
Barbecue at the end?
oranges and bananas and apples. Miss Normally, she's got the
She's got it.
proclamation.
We'll have Brian test. Sorry. Let me give them to Brian. Are you going to give this to? You want to give these to us?
No, yeah, to all the men.
Okay. We'll
Sorry.
put Brian to work. That's what we pay.
Yeah.
Let's take a
Thank
picture.
you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much. For us to take public comment. Let me read the legalities. The council takes public comment on all items in the regular agenda. Public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on an item not on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the council at this time. The council may request an item to be placed on a future agenda or on a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. On public hearing items, public input will be received on each item immediately following the council discussion. Prior to any action on the item, each member of the public should make the remarks from the podium and begin by stating their name. Remarks by each citizen will be limited to 3 to 5 minutes unless waived by a council member. For all speaking on the matter, no individual will be allowed to speak more than once on any one subject until every citizen wishing to comment has done so. If you would form a line at the front, and we will take your public comment, good or bad, pro or con. It's your time. Amy, you're first, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Amy Mizell Flint, and I wanted to come and give the council and the public an update on the dog park. About a little over a year ago, one of my Girl Scouts, who was working on her Gold Award at the time, came before you and talked about her dreams for a dog park in San Angelo. And the council unanimously voted to allow her to proceed. And since then, we've raised $45,000, and we have a $15,000 pledge for a total of $60,000. And the council had asked her to raise $75,000. So Megan, the Girl Scout, has since left for college. So as promised, I'm kind of helping progress our desire for the dog park. So I'm trying to find the last $15,000. I found a contest online by an organization called Pet Safe, and they are giving away 5 prizes, one $100,000 prize and 4 $25,000 prizes. And what they're doing is they're having a voting contest. So I'm asking the council and the citizens to please vote online. You can vote twice a day, once at their website at petsafe.com and once on their Facebook page. both of those links can be found on the San Angelo San Angelo Dog Park Facebook page. And we can vote twice a day up until June 10th. And then at that time, they'll choose 15 of the top communities based on numbers of votes and the community size. So I've been trying to look at all the cities, and there's 300 cities listed, and I've been looking at all of them, and we're doing well. We've got I looked last night, we had up over 200, and I'm hoping with this big media push that I'm doing this week, we'll more than double that or triple that or whatever, but we're hoping to become one of those top 15 that they choose for finalists, and then we'll have a 5-day voting period for that. And I really feel like there's enough support in San Angelo to have the votes to get the dog park that we want. And even the $25,000 award would be great, but the $100,000 would be even better. So thank you all for your support, and you can find more information at the San Angelo Dog Park site on Facebook.
Pam?
Thank you.
Could
Yes,
you
sir.
repeat those sites again?
Yes,
so that we know
one
where to
is it's petsafe.com, and the other one is PetSafe's website, or PetSafe's Facebook page. But you can find both of them on San Angelo Dog Park's Facebook page.
Pet Safe?
PetSafe, all one word.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
Amy had sent me an email last week, and I forwarded it on to the city manager with reference to this to put out there, and reminding that the council had been in full 100% support of this young lady and her efforts for a dog park. I would like to ask Carl White, and if the council put this on a future agenda, we're down to $15,000, and I believe the city manager has a letter for all the council to sign that is nothing other than in support to send to PetSafe to try to assist Miss Megan, and ask Carl to come back with possibly the final $15,000 as to where he thinks it could come from, and get the city to move forward on a location for the dog park. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? Mr. Anthony?
Just piggybacking on something Amy just said, you can also find those links on the city's Facebook page, City of San Angelo, public information, and on our website at cosatx.us/calendar. So we're trying to promote that as well, because we're as eager as everyone else to have a dog park. But I really stood up to talk about more upcoming town hall meetings that we're having, and we're having great turnout and great dialogue at each of these. Tonight, on Tuesday, June the 2nd, we are having our 5th town hall meeting on the new trash services that will be launching on July 20th. That meeting will be at 6 p.m. at Paul Ann Baptist Church, so we hope that whoever can make it will come out and learn more about our curbside recycling and the new trash bins and all the other services. And then we will also have another town hall meeting on the new trash services on Thursday, June the 11th at St. Mary's Catholic Church, and that'll be in Councilman Silvas' district. In addition to that, this Thursday at 6 p.m., we're going to have a town hall meeting also at St. Mary's Catholic Church on the city's efforts to mitigate the flooding problems along Avenue P. So again, we commend that to people who want to know more about that situation. And last night we had our second town hall meeting on the Charter Review Committee. That was at Lincoln Middle School. A very lively debate was had there last night. Not a debate, more of a discussion and a dialogue. And we'll be having our third and final Charter Review town hall meeting at 5:30 p.m. June the 16th at Southland Baptist Church. So again, you can find all of this information on the city's website, cosatx.us/calendar.
Thank you, Anthony. Further public comment? This is your opportunity. No further comment. Let's move on to the consent agenda. There are, how many items? Look like there are 9 items on the consent agenda. We'll start with you, Ms. Grindstaff. Is there anything you want to pull from consent to regular, and are there any comments you wish to make, ma'am?
Only comments, Mayor. I think my next neighborhood chat is scheduled for June 22nd, and I had spoken with the city manager to have Bob Solis and James Flores there, Dog Days of Summer, so we'll discuss animal control and other issues related to code compliance. I'm getting a lot of complaints from constituents about the appearance of the community, not related to rain and weed growth, but also signs attached to utility poles and the like. I think we're forgetting some of our rules. Also, the reoccurrence of garage sales as well. So maybe Anthony can help us put out some information and remind the citizens what the requirements are on those things. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Lucy?
Well, I was going to say something for once, but
Yes.
Anthony already beat me. He was told everybody about the service trash today, so no, sir, that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Charlotte?
I don't have anything from the consent agenda, and I do want to make one statement with reference to my town hall meeting last week at Southland Baptist. I want to thank the staff. They did an excellent job, and the 39 people that showed up and asked lots of questions. They were good questions, good meeting, good town hall, good participation from the citizens, and I do appreciate you. Thank you.
Johnny?
Yes, Mayor, I have got a couple of items. Anthony already beat me to a couple of them, or one of them. The scheduled town hall meeting Thursday evening, 6 p.m. I'll repeat it at St. Mary's Catholic Church, and we'll be talking about the Avenue P projects and what's coming down the line. A lot of concerned citizens, and I hope it's well attended. I'm sure it will be. And we'll be there to answer questions and tell them what is next on our plate to try to move forward with the idea. Again, 6 p.m., St. Mary's Catholic Church Gymnasium. A second one, I think Elizabeth touched base on it. I did get a call. You know, we put millions of dollars into the Concho River bank stabilization and just renovation, the whole thing. And I talked to Shane the other day, and I said, hey, there's a lot of weeds growing out there. And the gentleman that contacted me also said, we seem to have been taking care of it better before we renovated the whole thing. And it's kind of, and he wasn't being mean by any means, but I've driven, and I called you just yesterday when I was driving around along the river, and it looks pretty bad. I think that if an idea was mentioned, if we don't have the enough manpower to get it done, why don't we reach out to some of the local landscaping companies to, and I think folks wouldn't be upset for us using the taxpayer money to get it the way it should be taken care of and beautified, keep it better looking than it is today. And the third one, I was a number of months ago when all these riots were going on around the Baltimore area and Philadelphia, and I remember years and years ago there was a shootout in even California. And I was thinking the other day, even after seeing the Baltimore and Philadelphia, of why in the world don't we ever, we don't have an armored personnel carrier on PD in the department. So I wanted to take the time to plant the seed to at least let us look at maybe purchasing something like this for them. I know there was a shooting a couple of months ago around the Bradford Elementary area, and it got kind of scary for them. But I think the purchase of one of these type vehicles is the life of a police officer is a lot worth more than the price of one of these. So today I just like to plant the seed for us to look at it and bring it as a agenda item later on to see what. I did some research. I think you're looking at anywhere between $250,000, $300,000. Again, the life of a police officer versus the price of one of these it's apple and oranges. So I just wanted to plant the seed and say, hey, let's at least look at buying one of these and see what we can do to better serve our police department. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, John.
You.
Marty?
Mine's on a little lighter note. I wanted to piggyback on what Ms. Grindstaff said. Grandbabies are great, and I do need more. So I just wanted to plant the seed publicly, and that's really all I
I
have.
asked him how many more grandkids he had because we keep seeing them, but they're beautiful. Good to have you.
She's adorable. Yes.
I think that's one other thing.
Rodney?
How can I follow that? I don't have anything.
You can't top that. I'm not
We're not
saying,
ready for grandkids yet.
I'm not
are we,
saying
Rodney?
word.
No,
you're
we're not.
Well, I do have one other thing.
Yes, ma'am.
If Shane is out there listening, or people, Rebecca, if you're out there listening, I had noticed after my town hall meeting, new construction continues in San Angelo to build the enclosed trash areas, and possibly if somebody could get with the builders in town about new construction, because they're not going to fit the new trash containers, and get that, something done to stop that right away.
Anything else before we move on to consent agenda? Consent agenda.
I
If
would
not,
move-
then I will accept the motion.
I'll move to approve the
Second.
consent agenda.
I do. A motion to accept as presented. I do have a second from Ms. Farmer. This will be items number 1 through item number 9. Do I have public comment on the consent agenda before we vote? Do I have any further council comment before we vote? All in favor of approving the consent, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Put a 7-0 on that one, Mr. Bryan. Let's move on now to the public hearing and comment. This will be item number 10. This is an update on RFP ES0114 for professional services for
Mr.
pavement
Mayor?
data.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. It doesn't hurt to ask, but maybe after this item, can we, with the consent of the council, move, I believe it was item number, I lost it, number 16? If we can move it to the front of the agenda, if at all possible. If not, I'll go with the flow. Right.
I don't see Howard here. Is Howard here?
Oh, maybe after he
Is
shows up.
Egelmeyer here?
Oh,
Is Eric here? Were they going
Okay.
to be here?
They were going to be here.
Let's hold off until
Let's
we
hold
see
off.
if they
Okay.
show. I was the pavement data collection and pavement management, most commonly known as street condition study. Mr. Kelton.
All right, thank you, council. I just wanted to bring a quick update for you. It's not going to be a long process here. This will be fairly quick this morning. I just want to update on where we are, let you know that it's not stagnant. We are moving forward with it, and we're going. It's moving along quite well at this point, so we're hopefully going to start picking up speed. We've got the field collection of the data where they drove around with the van and drove every street in the city. That's been completed. We've had they've downloaded all their information into their software. They've gone through it. They've analyzed it. We'll show you the map here in just a second, the preliminary map that they came up with, and got that done. Initial review of the results. They came down last week. We spent quite a bit of time with them here, not only in the offices, but also out on the streets, looking at all their preliminary data, what they've gathered, what they've got on the maps. Basically went through a lot of the streets that we looked at. We identified some that we had some questions on. We did a field audit, went out, drove the streets, looked at the data actually in hand while we were on the streets, and to verify, to make sure that what we're actually seeing on paper is what we actually believe to be true in the field. So we've got that completed. They have now gone back into their labs, and they're sitting there. They're they're again drilling back through the data to make sure that they haven't missed anything. We did catch 1 or 2 items where they had where they drove a road twice, and so they doubled over the data. So we saw some things like that that we identified, and they're going back to clean that up and drill that down. As we move forward, when we get to the back, we'll kind of show you the rest of the timeline moving forward as we come out of this. This is just basically a very small snapshot of the data sheet that they have in the Excel spreadsheet. The PCI score, Pavement Condition Index, is basically what that is, and they give you a rating, 0 to 100, 0 being the worst there could be, and 100 being the best. A brand new street we built yesterday, and it takes, and just so you know, when they collect their data, it takes 180 rows of information for them to create this pavement condition score index. This one, there's a lot of data that goes into creating this score, and so it's not whether it's rough or smooth. It's not those things. There's a whole lot of information, and certain things can drive the score down faster than other things as we move along. You can see right here how they did the data. We just took Ashford Street, Ashford Drive, as an example here. And this whole street right here, you can see that they broke that down by block. So it's not like Ashford Street as a whole. It's each block of Ashford Street has its own sampling point. So we know from block to block how good that street is. And we know that on all the streets throughout town now. And so we can do it block by block instead of a whole long segment at one time. So if there are areas that we really need to concentrate on, whether that be something as simple as a seal coat, or if we actually need to reconstruct and seal coat, we know that block by block now. You can see the preliminary map that we had. This is, we just put this on here as a very screenshot, but I think everybody's, it's been on, been in the news, it's online, and people can get on there and view it. And again, when I got this, it was kind of like, I was a little shocked myself when the first time I pulled it up, all the red and black showed up. It was a little scary. After we sat down with Food Grow and we visited with them a little bit, they said this result everywhere they go is really typical of every town that they go in. Said most of their maps look like this. You have really older segments of town, really old streets, mostly neighborhood streets, that are in this condition. They said it's all over the United States. It's not just us. We're not just here alone. It's all over. So when you look at this, and you can tell the older parts of town versus the newer parts of town as the colors and highlights and everything change. A lot of these, and we'll get into it here in just a second, a lot of these, what you're seeing on the red and black, are on residential streets. Have some of them failed? Yes, some of them have failed. Others, it's just really old pavement that needs to be reconditioned. The rideability of it is still, it's not a real rough street, but it has, maybe it's a lot of alligator cracking, things like that, where it's still fairly smooth. The street has, if we put a 2-course seal coat on it, we can probably bring that street back, and it can service us for many more years to come. And so just to look at it, we have a few, and of course we have video for the entire city, for every street segment. And what we've done is we've looked at some of these, some of the failures that really cause, and these are the most extreme cases that we highlighted here. We have them from 1 to 0 to 100 as far as severity goes, as far as the different things that they were looking at. But these things that we're highlighting here are what really drive down your PCI scores. Alligator cracking is probably one of the things that drives down the most. And most of the time you associate alligator cracking with failed substructure, with failed base and substructure is what you normally identify that with. And again, not all of that. Some of it, especially on the low volume residential streets, we can address with just maintenance instead of having to need reconstruction. But you can see the alligator cracking in the, if I can get it there, in this area right here highlighted in red, you can see all of the, it's one solid crack. And so that's alligator cracking. And that probably is the single most highest weighted thing that can drive down your PCI score. Look at bleeding, which this means it's the asphalt in the seal coat process has bled through, or we've had the rock that has, the rock is actually gone away. So shelled off or whatever it's happened over the years, and so we have bleeding and we have actually slick asphalt surface showing. Block cracking, which is not as severe as alligator cracking, but you can tell in this highlighted area where you have, you have longer, wider cracks that are bigger in nature and size. Again, that's something that does drive down. This is North Bell Street on the other side of the loop from the river, so looking at this one right here. Again, a very old street here in the city. Edge cracking, visiting with Harry earlier, he was talking about edge cracking on his street at his house. Another thing that will drive down your PCI score fairly rapidly. And of course potholes. We have plenty of those all over town. This winter was pretty rough to us. We got beat up pretty bad, and lots of issues with potholes right now. All right, future benchmarks. We have the complete finalized upload into the system as we move along. They're expecting another 4 to 5 weeks. That was last week, so we're already a week down on it. And then from there, and this is a progressive chain, they will also be looking, KSA Engineers is the Food Grow's partner here in the city. They are going to be looking at assessments, and we will be coming up with if there's any further testing needing, whether we, if we need to go out and drill some cores, do some things like that on certain areas that it might be marginal on some of the streets for them to determine whether reconstruction is necessary or not, we will. They're also they're going to be putting together traffic volumes, our ADTs on our streets, to look at them so they know, when we're looking at arterials versus collectors versus residential, so we can start prioritizing our streets based on need and based on severity of the damage that we have on them. And then after that, after they get through with their upload, the draft budget, we should see within another 3 to 4 weeks after that. And we should have, we're hoping 3 months, and we're pushing on them pretty hard. Within 3 months, we hope to have a final budget and analysis, and we also hope to have a final report in hand for council, for staff, and for everybody to see. And that way, and hopefully at that point, it's a complete work plan, and we'll bring it back to y'all for y'all's approval and for y'all to approve and give us direction to move forward with starting to tackle some of these larger issues at this point. We know the Bell Streets and the Martin Luther King Boulevards and the Southwest Boulevards, and those, we know some of those are going to be high priorities, but we won't, come back. We'll give y'all the analysis and give y'all, let y'all give us your blessing to move forward and start tackling some of these projects as we move forward. So this is also going to give us, we're going to have a short and long-term street maintenance plan based off this as well too. They're going to help us identify not only, we may be, from our standpoint, we may have been seal coating, crack sealing and seal coating for years and years without looking maybe so at some other treatments. Well, these guys, they're experts, and they do this all over the world, not just the United States. And so they have a wealth of knowledge about other treatments that have worked in other areas for specific areas where we start looking at maybe a residential street that has a lot of alligator cracking but still has a smooth surface. Maybe there's another treatment that we can use besides seal coating, and they're going to have those recommendations for us as we move forward as well too. So that kind of wraps it up. Do y'all have any questions?
Questions?
Sure.
Start with you.
How often, after we complete this investigation, how often do you think we need to go back to Fugro or another company that does this? Because I think we've done something similar or some evaluation previously, but in order to keep, a process that is apolitical as much as we can get it, how often do you think we would have to do that? Like a 10-year cycle?
Yeah, they suggest one a little bit sooner than that, but I think we could probably get by with a 10-year because we're actually uploading this into software that we're going to have in-house, and we're going to actually have something that we haven't done before. Is anytime that we actually do a process, we're actually it's going to be a living, breathing thing at this point. And so with the new software that this will be working on, it will actually have. We'll be able to keep up with the input and the data as we're doing it, which will make things a whole lot easier. And in 10 years, when we go back with Fugro or another company like that, it'll be a much less intensive process because all of this data is already there, and we're going to keep this data current as we move forward with everything we do, from fixing a pothole from our guys out in the field, and when they just fix a pothole, to an actual full-blown patch or any milling overlays or anything that we do to our system. They will. We're going to keep it updated, so it'll be a lot less intensive process.
I can just see some areas deteriorating more rapidly than others, depending on what their problem is. Okay, maybe more important, when your department was created and separated from what was then Public Works, water was separated from operations. A big reason for that was to make sure that there was cooperation and two heads watching over the coordination of infrastructure in the city. And so how are we going to use this with regard to street reconstruction and also water line replacement? Because in the end, that's what we've all said we've wanted, but I'm not sure how we've actually implemented a coordination strategy.
We've actually been talking about that with Bill and Russell, quite a bit here lately as we're moving forward. And actually, KSA, part of their their charge in this is going to be to sit down with, once they kind of get a line item of the streets and kind of a priority list of the streets that are really, for reconstruction purposes, they're going to, part of their charge is to sit down with Bill and Russell and go through the water and sewer utilities as well to ensure, and even in those streets where we do have Verizon and Atmos and some of those other underground utilities, to ensure that either the systems that are underground and in place right now are sufficient and won't need to be upgraded anytime soon, or if they are deficient, that's going to be a part of the consideration as we move forward into the reconstruction and the replacement cycle.
I think, Daniel, that's as critical as anything we're doing, whether it's, as he said, whether it's water lines or the other utilities, the franchises, because I don't think we've taken good care of our streets, even what we had control over in some of those areas. I think I don't think the public understands about the trench repair contract, and I'm not sure that we're maybe as fast on that as we should be, and it certainly harms the integrity of our streets. So appreciate you watching that.
One of the worst things that could happen is that we go in there and we repair those streets, have them in like new condition, and we go back a couple of weeks later, tear them up to replace a line,
right?
A water line. That's just
we've wasted all of this if we allow that to continue.
Absolutely, and we do know that it has to be a very well coordinated effort to make sure that any lines that do need to be replaced will be replaced before we do that work. We have to be responsible with taxpayer money and do it the right way.
Charlotte?
Are we, during this pavement and budget analysis, are we including the, not bridges, but the cans that water flows, the stormwater, so that we're not just laying something over something that's worthless in a can and drainage? Is the budget going to include the replacement of for proper drainage in a can?
Any structure that's under the, that we have that's associated with it, whether it's a can or box culvert or whatever, if it needs to be replaced at that time,
that will
it will be a part. It will be a part of the budget analysis. Okay. Yes.
Questions, John?
Yes. Shane, I know that you mentioned video of this process. I think next time, if you could include a video of how it all operates, that van that's driving. Okay. I've never seen the van, and I don't even know what it looks like. But I think the public, the taxpayers, would probably be interested in seeing how it works. So maybe get with Brian, and he can videotape of.
Well, I hope next time I'm here that I have Fugro standing here to be their engineers and everybody going through that, and I will make sure that they bring a picture of their van and it operating and actually what they're looking at and what they're seeing when they're doing it.
I'd be curious to see what the data looks like when it drove over Bell Street, and to see what kind of information came out of that.
And we'll be able to do that. We'll actually have the spreadsheet, the information that computer generates.
Does it look like a Richter scale that
it's just a bunch of numbers. It's just zeros and ones going across. I mean, and twos. It's just a bunch of numbers going across there. So that would mean us looking at that data that computer produces, because they were showing me on their model when they brought it by City Hall for me to look at. To the human eye, just looking at it, that's uneducated, you don't have a clue what that means. So, but we do have the numbers that on the spreadsheet where they've actually transferred that into real data that's measurable and actually means something to us. And so I'll be able to, and we'll have that spreadsheet, and actually I have it here, and it's huge. If you ever want to look at it, I'll be more than happy to pull out any road segment, so you can see out of those 180 columns of information that they gathered, what Bell Street looks like. So all you have to do is holler at me, and I'll be more than glad to.
And all the other streets, what they look like
and
too,
And all
I'm
the
sure.
other streets, yes. Yeah, there's lots of them, so.
Yes.
Yeah, because 180 rows of data may look like Greek to us, but yes, I think I'd be curious to see how that van operates and what what information.
It's a white van?
It was a big white van, had ARAN on the side of it, so that was it. So
we verified that we approved the seal coat program last meeting.
Yes, sir.
We're not seal coating the street that's going to have to be replaced.
No, sir.
Corrected. Okay. Once we start so based on this, we're 10 to 15 weeks out. If a street has to be replaced and we approve it, how long will the engineering take?
Engineering, can take 3 to 6 months. Right now, we're currently working, the Engineering Services Department is currently working on an RFQ to go out for engineering design services. So we can actually start turning some of these projects faster because of our in-house guys are pretty well covered up right now with projects, and it would take us a lot longer in-house to do these designs. And we, and we understand council's urgency to get these streets back in condition. So we're going to go out with this RFQ for these design services for streets and actually any utilities that need to be done as well too. And we expect that to be out on the streets anytime, and we'll 3 to 4 weeks, and we'll be bringing it back to council for y'all to look at and give us the authorization to negotiate a contract. So.
And we're taking utilities into consideration, you said?
Yes, sir. This
Okay.
in the RFQ process, we will be taking all the utilities into consideration as well.
All right. Okay.
Further council questions? Public? Is there any questions from the public for Shane before we move on to the next item? Thank you, Shane. Very good
thanks,
report.
Shane.
Thank you very much. All right, Johnny, what were you asking a while ago, sir?
If we could pull up, I believe it's item 16, and I do see Howard and Eric. And
I saw the
come
Myers
here
and
here,
Howard.
so-
The only other thing that we have is going to take some time is number 13, and that's probably going to take an hour or so. The rest of the things on the agenda are primarily in-house. So would council oppose to bringing 16 forward and handling that? It shouldn't take much time. Any problems on the left wing?
No, sir.
Right wing? Okay, let's go ahead and bring 16 forward and deal with it while we have the Myers and Howard here. Consideration of approving matters related to lease of city-owned Bart DeWitt Park property for a public heritage museum. Carl?
Good morning. I need to find the presentation. I found it. If I could, allow me some time to go through the presentation, give you some background information, and then I know there's some folks here that want to speak on behalf of the item. The property in question is some Bart DeWitt Park property. This is Oak Street. The Concho River is down here to the south. This yellow line shows essentially where the property line is. Property to the south is part of Bart DeWitt Park. Property to the east is part of Bart DeWitt Park. Essentially, the property line follows this fence line you can see here. And some of the affected park property is also this slope here, because the park property was essentially raised about 8 feet. So in August 1st, 2005, the city entered into agreement with Mr. Eric Egermeyer to create an historic agricultural museum. If I could, I'd like to read briefly the general concept of the lease, because it spells out very well what the intent of the lease was. The general concept for the use of the property is as follows. The intent of this lease is to increase the usable size of the property owned by lessee in order to operate an outdoor, real live, turn of the last century historic agricultural museum. That's one of the key words, museums. The property will serve as a multi-use facility for the purpose of increasing tourism, benefiting lessee, and bringing more events, that's another key word, events, to the historic downtown area, thereby benefiting the public. That's another set of keywords, benefiting the public. Lessee will bring in demonstrations that will have been typical of the frontiersman's life during the late 1800s and early 1900s. Events, again the word events, such as barn raising, log home construction, farming, ranching, and tradesman services will be demonstrated. Everything from blacksmithing, wagon construction, haymaking, a grist mill operation, steam tractors, drive engines, and sheep shearing will be included. The term of the lease was for 5 years, so the lease did expire in August 2010. However, there is a holdover clause allowing the lease to continue month to month, terminable at will of lessor, the city. On October 25th, 2013, the city sent Mr. Egermeyer a letter stating the termination. We requested termination since the general concept had not been met. Mr. Egermeyer appealed this termination, requested hearing at the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. At the meeting of the November 21st, 2013 Advisory Board meeting, the board recommended the city rescind the termination notice and give Mr. Eggemeyer 6 months to meet the terms of the original lease and report to the board bi-monthly. So we rescinded that notice, and we set up a series of meetings for Mr. Eggemeyer to give updates to the board. Reports occurred on the following meetings: January, April, May, June, and October of 2014, and February 2015. At the April 2014 meeting, the board asked Mr. Eggemeyer to achieve the following specific items related to meeting the general concept: install permanent signage, develop a master interpretive sign for the museum, have the grounds cleaned up, and open as a public museum. At the meeting on February 26, 2015, Mr. Eggemeyer gave his final report. The grounds had been cleaned up, a vinyl banner sign had been added, the gates were open, and he reported that he's working with Mr. Howard Taylor and the Barrel Foundation to move the concept forward. He was not able to show that any permanent signage had been added or that any events had been held as stated in the general concept. At that meeting, the board voted 4-2 to recommend termination of the lease, termination of the existing lease. This is a concept of what the Heritage Museum would look like. Here are images from just a few days ago. This is the back side of the property. You can tell improvements have been made. You can see the vinyl sign back here. Just want to quickly show images of other agricultural heritage museums around Texas. This one in Bernie. You see the signage, you see the displays. Lindale, you see the word museum, a gift shop. This one in Lubbock, again signage and displays. Now, since the board recommendation, Mr. Eggemeyer has made additional improvements to the site, most notably the awning on his building, and the stack blocks were added to the back entrance. Let me show that again. Since the meeting, these blocks have been added to assist with the back entrance, and this awning has been added to his property. And again, I don't mean to talk about his property. His property is here. We're talking about the lease with the city for the use of this property associated with the museum. And I would like to point out, from the very beginning, we've been supportive of this concept. It's a wonderful idea. Mr. Eggemeyer is a great idea person. The only issue here is the lease. The vehicle we use to get there to meet that concept has not worked. Another point to point out is that in the lease, it talks about consideration. If any organization, individual leases property from the city must get consideration, whether that's rent or some public benefit, whether it could be through tourism, which would be indirect revenue. In this case, additional consideration for this lease shall be the operation of the property as an outdoor historical agricultural museum with programs, exhibits, and events which can be accessed by the public. This consideration has not been met. Now, where do we go from here? And I'll show this right quick, and then you can hear other comments. We do seek direction on how to approach this. One possible approach is to renegotiate the existing lease, adding more explicit terms so that we can achieve the general concept. Another option is to terminate the existing lease and require the park property to be returned to pre-lease condition. I don't support that recommendation. I do support this recommendation or others similar to this. Terminate the existing lease. Don't require any modification of the park property for a length of time, whatever that is, 6 months or a year. Consider a proposal from a not-for-profit organization to lease the city's property to meet the general concept of the original lease so that we can have a public heritage museum at that site. That would be my recommendation. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, I'm sure you want to hear from others.
How about go ahead and taking public comment on this time, and we'll get all the public comment and we'll be able to discuss. Is that a problem? Public comment. Eric, do you want to speak? Howard?
Good morning.
Eric, if you would just give them to Brian, he will pass them out.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Howard Taylor, Director of the St. Angelo Museum of Fine Arts and Chairman of the St. Angelo Cultural District Project. With the permission of the Eggemeyers and with the consent of City Council, I'd like to address the concerns that have been presented. I certainly understand the Park Board's desire to see this project completed. I became aware of it about 2 years ago, even though it's been going on for a while, and I had to stop and have a conversation with the Eggemeyers because I wondered what was going on over there, and became very excited about the potential that this holds for our community and our downtown. It's been nearly a decade since the Eggemeyers signed the lease with the city to develop this property, and it should be noted, by the way, that the entire area is probably less than about a third of an acre of the parkland that's there. The investments that the Eggemeyers have made are truly astonishing, and I had to see the documentation on this, but they've spent more than $250,000 at this site already. That includes the landfill and building a retaining wall, construction of massive ramps, access. I think Eric pointed out the shed that's been built for demonstrations and things of that nature, and then also the property that they own with the blacksmith shop. Significant improvements have been made there. But the reality is that this project is still not completed and available to the public in the way that both the Parks Board and the Eggemeyers desire. I'd like to quickly explain why I think this project's so exciting and why I think it needs to be seen through to completion. First, let me point out, I probably don't really need to do this for you, but the Eggemeyer family has had a significant history of contributions to the community. Their business has become a major attraction, and in fact, on a trip to Europe a couple of years ago, I read a magazine article about their store in downtown St. Angelo. They've continued to make improvements to their store every year, and they've done major things even in this past year on the street level. And also, I think the entire family is engaged in the business every day. Mother, father, and Eric working together. And then also, they're farmers, and Eric himself plants and harvests cotton and other crops in nearby Wall. And they've recently restored a historic church in the country and made it available for public use. The challenge there, I think, is that this is one of dozens of projects they've been working on, and I think they're spread pretty thin. When I read about or learned about this Concho Valley Farm and Ranch Museum, I became excited because it fits beautifully into a project that we've been working on quietly in the Cultural District. And the project that's really too big to describe here, but essentially we're working on trying to create a family heritage center. When you look at St. Angelo, we have one of the most intact original frontier forts in America. Even the depot is unique because not only has it been restored, but the original fabric of that depot was largely intact. And then another historic enterprise in our community, Miss Hattie's, the House of Ill Repute, is virtually intact. You wouldn't have to recreate these things, but it did seem to me it'd be nice to show some other aspects of economic activity in our community. We don't have any place where we come together and celebrate the total heritage of our community, and so we've been working with and talking to these various entities, the fort, the depot, and also another almost magical place that some of you may know about. It's called the Barrow Museum near Eola. And it's one of the most amazing places I've ever seen. It's kind of like a small Smithsonian right here in Texas, and I feel it's very much a part of our community. And so we've been talking to them to converge all of these interests to celebrate the broader heritage of our community. One of the things we have not really come to recognize is that San Angelo is one of the truly great agricultural capitals of the world. We all know about our heritage with wool and with sheep and goats and also cotton and other things. Many publications and other activities originate right here in San Angelo. And so I think that this site and the concept that's there is brilliant, but it hasn't happened yet. One of the things that's important also is that blacksmith shop, which some of you know because it's been there as long as you've been alive, and before that it's been there almost 100 years, which is amazing. And it's virtually intact on the interior, and all the equipment, much of it original, still operates and functions. So it does present a great opportunity. I think the real difficulty with this project has been that there are very few concepts like it anywhere in the country that have been done entirely privately. And so we have proposed to create this nonprofit entity that Carl has suggested. We've drafted bylaws. You have a copy in front of you. Looked at creating a board of directors and officially incorporating and working with Eric. And there are other advantages. I think all the examples he showed of other agricultural museums were indeed run through a nonprofit entity, and some of them in combination working with private entities. And so that's what we would like to suggest. And I think that of the three suggestions that are up there, I kind of lean towards incorporating the first one and the third one, which is to renegotiate the lease with more explicit terms and measures, which I think that would be very realistic. Do this by this time, or at least if it can't be completed, have some dialogue about why not. But then bring in the nonprofit entity as a co-signature on this, because there is private property involved that's a part of this, and I think that the lease would have to spell out, the appropriate ownership between the city, the nonprofit entity, and the Eggemeyer family. So anyhow, that's our broad suggestion. I think I have great enthusiasm for the potential this holds. I can't think of a more ideal site. You've got the existing blacksmith shop. The extension of the property is not very much, as you point out, but without it, it would be difficult to achieve that, and I think it barely takes a tiny little bite out of the parkland that's adjacent. But I do believe in accountability, and I think that by bringing in this private support and a nonprofit entity, we can make this thing become reality with some measurable outcomes. And that's my presentation.
Okay, Howard, you're saying then that you would go with, and if we were to make a motion to accept this, you're saying to renegotiate the lease with more explicit terms and to consider a proposal with the nonprofit organization to lease and operate the property.
Yes, or at least be co-signatures with the Eggemeyer family on the lease, yes.
Very well. All right, any other public comment on this before we speak? Carl, there's one thing I have a question on, sir. And we've spoken about this before, about the creation of an Old West town, so that our enactors would have a spot to work. I don't see that it'd have to be on that little bit of an area, but I suppose it's still on the Bart DeWitt property. I'd sure like to have a spot for our enactors to build their Old West town. I think, this is historic relevance here. That's where the soldiers crossed over, and I would really love to see an old town here. So if there's something that needs to be considered in the motion to make sure that that happens, if it's necessary.
What does that have to do with the lease?
Well, it doesn't. I'm just saying, I don't know how, the lease is just in the yellow here.
We think we can achieve both.
Okay.
There is space. We've visited with Craig Kinney, and he's kind of sketched out how that could fit with the existing available space. It can work.
Okay. I thought this lease covered all the way to the river, so I see if it's just in the yellow there, this is, my concerns are not important, but
essentially affected
that's
properties
the area
right
I want for the old town right there.
Yeah,
there's plenty of space down here for the old town.
Never mind. Charlotte?
Well, and feel free, Carl, to correct me if I'm wrong, but my interpretation is we've been working with the Eggemeyer family for quite some time, several years, and my concern is the movement, the pace as to how fast it's getting done. When I sit and look back at all of the improvements that have been done down on the river, right there across the street, the museum, and this all connects with our history. it's not moving at a pace to keep up with the improvements of San Angelo's historic area. I'm all for what the Eggemeyers have done, their contribution. It's great, it's wonderful. But what I'm seeing is they're involved in so many other entities, and they are personally trying to develop this themselves. So it's not a full-time adventure, is what it appears. If I'm wrong, please tell me, because I've not talked to anyone about this. And that concerns me, because the growth that we're seeing in San Angelo and our tourism and what we're bringing, and this particular piece of land and this project is right in the heart of things and needs to move along. So I share your concern, Carl, is to possibly to terminate the lease and renegotiate with some deadlines, because we've had deadlines, and if they're doing it individually in their spare time, off time, it's not keeping up with what we're trying to do to develop the historic area down there and cherish the historic area. That's my comments on it. Then I have questions. Who are the board members and the president, secretary, treasurer of this contract?
Of the agreement?
Yes.
It's just with Mr. Eggemeyer. The city has leased the property with Mr. Eggemeyer.
Okay, I'm looking at the Concho Valley Farm and Ranch Heritage Center.
That board does not yet exist.
It doesn't exist?
No, we have to incorporate it. And basically what we're saying is that we wanted to create this organization. It doesn't make sense to create it unless we have, the agreement that we can go forward with that. But we're envisioning a board, and we've talked to a number of people. I'm not sure I could mention all the names, but we want it to be culturally diverse, so it reflects the community. People from the agricultural and ranching business in our region. And a board of about 7 people. And this would be the standard procedure, like even before the museum was created, we had to conceptually get agreement, and years ago when the art museum was created, we basically did a deal with the city and then with the community development funds to develop the museum at the fort, and then the board structure was created after that. I would serve on that board as both chairman of the cultural district and also director of the art museum. And then we've talked to a number of people who, like I said, are in this business, but we haven't yet, named that board of directors. And then the bylaws that you're looking at are pretty standard for a type of corporation like this, and we're suggesting a board of 7 people, and it spells out how they would meet and what the obligations are and so forth. So we wouldn't want to really create that until we got approval to go ahead and negotiate a lease, and then we can move ahead with creating the actual incorporation of the group.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
That concerns me. Like I said, right there in the heart of the city, leased on city land. I would feel better if our attorney has gone over and looked and worked with you on this stuff, and
I think we have to do that.
And see timeframes that we need to meet, or everything becomes null and void, and any improvements, it's just like out at the airport, any improvement stays with the city. I don't see that in the writing here, and I think it should be.
Johnny? Yeah, I was going to say to Charlotte, I do share her concerns on the one hand. On the other, I do applaud Eric Eggemeyer and company, whoever that may be. I believe he's a one-man show, and I believe he's done all this with his blood, sweat, and tears, and I applaud him for his efforts to accomplish what he's been trying to accomplish. Sure, he hadn't met deadlines and all, but I too applaud you, Howard, for at least throwing him a lifeline to help him, because he can't do it alone. We realize that. Carl realizes that, the timeline isn't there. It hasn't accomplished what he said he was going to accomplish, and I understand that. I am all in favor of terminating the lease, bringing you guys on board to help him out, and finish out this idea. And I believe even the pictures that I saw today, it looks amazing compared to what I did day one. So all the land work, the fencing that was, I guess, donated by the city, I don't know, but I really am passionate about his idea to finish it off. And again, with your help, I know he can finish it. I wish we would had pictures of the inside of the stable. I hear that it looks totally different than it did. I saw it a couple of months ago. It looked kind of rough in there, but if it looks a lot better than it did then I applaud him also for that. But again, I guess I could make a motion right now to approve this item as presented with items A to terminate the lease and item C to bring you guys on board and get with our attorney and sit down and hash out the verbiage, because like you're not a group yet. You're not a nonprofit organization. It hasn't been.
We haven't incorporated.
Right, you haven't incorporated. So I believe that sitting down with our attorney, getting with Eric, and bringing it all together, I believe it's a win-win. And I like your idea. We can bring that later on down the road. There's nothing wrong with that. But I believe it'd be bad for us to stop the progress of this thing, of this idea, as far as it's gotten. So. That is my motion to incorporate.
And we can go ahead and incorporate and put the board together very quickly, because the people have already been asked and invited, but I don't want to reveal their names specifically, until that's agreed upon. But it is culturally diverse and I think very acceptable to the community. And also the art museum is participating. We have already put some money into this. Not a lot. I mean, I will remind you, $250,000 out of private pockets into something like this, and it's a relatively small piece of land, but the advantage of it, because the Egermeyers could do this without that piece of city land, but it would be too constrained and squeezed into a tight little space. And so I think that having the city participation will really help propel this. And but I understand your frustration, because I had the same thing, and I know how stretched thin these guys are. But since we've gotten on board and been helping them, things have moved pretty darn quick. I mean, and I can't believe how much money they've dug out of their own pocket to make some improvements.
Hey, Mayor, I'm okay with the timelines. We've got to put timelines in there, and so we're all on the same page and move forward. No problem with that.
On the proposal that you put before us today on the setting up the committee and everything, is there going to be somebody that's going to be from the Egermeyers that are going to be on the board?
Yes, we figured it will not be controlled by the Egermeyer family. It'll be diverse, and so there'll be one representative of the Egermeyer family that'll be participating, and 6 other people, including myself, representing the art museum and the cultural district, and like I said, different people of different backgrounds, some who are in that area already, who are in the agricultural business or in the ranching business.
And the Egermeyers are fine with just having one representative
well, yeah, we told them it had to be that way, and so they agreed. And I think one of the important things is that they have a great deal of personal property involved, and so we want to be sure that in the lease it's understood which is owned by the city, which is owned by the not-for-profit corporation, and then which is owned by the Egermeyers. Because, for example, the Barrows Museum, which is also a nonprofit entity, is willing to lend equipment and things from that museum and bring them into the city, and they have pretty significant investment in that themselves. They've restored things, and those things have value, and they could not really realistically loan that to a for-profit organization or a private entity that has to go to another nonprofit. And I think that's one of the key things that really holds up something like this. If anybody sets up, and you can do it, you can call a museum that you own personally a museum, but if you're going to borrow and do education programs and raise funding, you have to have a nonprofit entity, or you can't do those things. So.
I would second what Johnny says. I think that is the way to go, but I think that we're early on this. I think that this board needs to be set up before, and our attorneys need to review these documents before we even vote on this. I don't think we should take a vote on this, but I do think that we are headed in the right direction. I think that this is what we do need to do, and I think there probably is a consensus on that. But if we get our attorneys to go over this document, make sure that the city is good with this, the Egermeyers, appears to be the Egermeyers are good with this, and you would be good with this, I think this is the right way to go.
Come back in a few months.
Yeah.
Charlotte?
I would also like to speak, Mayor.
I would like to ask Rick and Carl. To me, this ties with the heart of our city and our tourist attraction, our heritage, and our historic value. I feel like that either Rick or Carl One should also serve on that board, their title, their capacity, so that this improvement ties in with the rest of the city's improvement that we are doing. I just think it's crucial to it blend and go together. I would like to see that, Carl.
Maybe as ex officio.
Yes, that's fine.
That's already in our concept, so
Yes.
I think that's a good recommendation.
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Several months ago, Eric and I spoke about this project and the impending termination. And I told him then that my feeling was that he needed to put together a performance plan, make his case, and get an extension, because I think we all agree that the vision of this is wonderful. The work that has been done is significant. It's just not within the parameters of a time frame and a lease that was established back in 2005. I also believe that probably Bobby and Eric's mom have something to do with this. The Eggemeyers are such busy people, and they do such quality things that I think in the end this is going to be the very thing that, again, everybody had envisioned. But I also believe that there has to be a public benefit established. So, Howard, I like what you're proposing. I think that, in hindsight, the city never should have embarked upon this with an individual, not because of performance by the Eggemeyers, but simply it's not the way to develop a museum. The nonprofit, I think, is always the better vehicle. They have their assets involved, and they need our land. So I think what everyone has come up with is very good. And I'm like Charlotte. I think that before we proceed, we need to have the nonprofit vehicle in place. I think that's the appropriate way to do it. And I, like everyone up here, looks forward to seeing the opening of this, the full opening as it was conceived. But one question that I have for Carl is, in the original lease agreement, there was a requirement that this be ADA accessible. And I'm still interested in seeing that happen and want to know if that's still a part of the plan.
It's still part of the existing lease and would be part of a new lease.
Okay. I think that's very important. So anyway, thank you for everyone's work on this.
Well, with the direction, we can come back in a certain amount of time, 2 or 3 months.
I think we have consensus that this is a good project and that we can move on this with a marriage of the two proposals with the museum and the Eggemeyers. I see a consensus that this is acceptable. Is anyone opposed to that?
You're going to have to remove the motion in the second.
Would you like to remove your motion, John?
Yeah.
Would you remove your second, Rodney?
Yeah, I didn't second.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to wait.
Okay, then consensus is that we move forward with this, bring us back something concrete so we can vote on and get everything established, and sound like a winner to me.
Thank
you,
Howard.
very much.
And
Eric,
thank you to
y'all.
the Eggemeyers.
Yes.
It is 10:21. Let's take about 15 minutes and we'll come back and tackle the rest of it. It is 10:44. Okay, I do have a few requests here. I guess we're just going to handle them one at a time. We are ready for number 11. However, there has been a request that we pull forward the communication system. That's number 12. There's been a request that we pull number 14, which is the tiers boards, to next. And there has been a request that we pull number 19 next. I know we have Catalyst. That's going to take an hour or so. I know we have people waiting here for Catalyst. I know we have people waiting here for the sexual orientated and number 19. And we also have them here for tiers. So, council, what's your decision? Do we follow our agenda as presented and let people wait, or do we start pulling things out of order? Give me some direction.
If people are here in the audience, I would like to take them before regular stuff.
Yeah, but we have people here for all of the items, so which one?
Every
In
item.
number of,
In
well,
number?
you just said it.
Okay.
Just leave it as it is.
Okay. And we also need to take care of number 11.
Okay.
Just keep it as is, I guess. Is
I think we'll
Keep it
just
in
keep the
Just leave 'em in
agenda
order.
as is and work them as we get them.
Yeah.
Everybody agree?
I think we need to consider doing that in the future, because I'm not sure why we moved up the other one. Everybody in this room has an important activity and has other places to be, so
That's true.
so that everyone is respected and we're respectful of their time.
All right.
Can we tell the public out there that maybe they can inform us or inform their council person ahead of time on Thursday or Friday and ask that those items be moved up at that time?
Well, I had been asked on that. I had been asked on item number 16.
Yes, and I
And
was
Johnny
asked.
had been asked as well, so.
Only if there's a flight to catch or some compelling reason. Otherwise, everyone else would like to be somewhere else than sitting here all day long.
Brian does take that into consideration. As we're assembling the agenda, we take a look at that and make sure that hopefully we can organize it in a manner where we get people in and out right away.
I think general consensus today, though, is that we follow the agenda as it is written from now on out. So let's take number 11. Second hearing, consideration of adopting an ordinance annexing to the city of San Angelo city limits of certain properties situated immediately west of San Angelo, generally located on the northwest corner of Arden Road and FM Highway 2288, specifically described as approximately 44.821 acres of land out of BS&F Survey 5, Abstract number 101, and ABNM Survey 3, Abstract number 24, Tom Green County, Texas, and said 44.821 acre tract, also being out of a certain 917.9 acre tract, described and recorded in instrument number 703583, official public records of Tom Green County, Texas, and said 44.821 acre tract, being more particularly described by meets and bounds in Tom Green County, Texas. Ms. Guerra, you are on, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Rebecca Guerra, Planning Manager. This is the 5th of 5 annexation public hearings as required by the state of Texas for what we are calling the Arden Road annexation. It is a little over 44 acres located north of Arden Road and west of FM 2288. It is located in the ETJ. It is located in the ETJ, and if annexed, will likely be put into single-member district number 6.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
We've dealt with this one
Yes,
before.
we have.
Thank you.
Do I have further comment from council?
You know, I don't love the configuration, but I'm going to support it.
Do I have comment from the public on this before we
You don't
vote?
like the flag?
I don't like the flag, but I'm going to support it.
We do have a motion to approve this as accepted. We do have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Put a 7-0 on it. Thank you, Ms. Guerra.
Good job, Rebecca.
Number 12, we would like all of them to move this quickly.
Yes. Please.
Number 12 is consideration of a resolution authorizing city manager to negotiate and execute a communication system agreement with Daly and Wells Communication Incorporated for purchase of a P25 Phase 2 simulcast system upgrade under the Harris Corporation HGAC by contract RA05-15 in substantially the attached form, not to exceed $5,733,692.16, and any documents related thereto. Mr. Hasty, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Bucky Hasty. I am the network administrator for the city of San Angelo. I oversee some IT functions of the city as well as the radio system. I wanted to talk about our current system real quick. I just got a short presentation to show y'all just to kind of get y'all up to date on what we have and what we're moving towards. Our current system serves the police department, the fire department, and the city. And when I say city, I mean animal control, water permits, and the fire marshal. Organizations like that. We purchased this system in 2007. The radios and the accessories themselves, the handhelds and the mobile devices, which are in the cars, they're reaching the end of their service life, which is usually around 8 years. The current site is a multi-site system. I've talked about that before. It basically means there's 2 independent radio sites, and when mobile radios travel across town, they switch towers, and there's a little 3 to 5 second delay to where they lose connectivity. It's more of an annoyance than anything, but there is a little officer safety issue if they're on something on a chase and they key up and it switches towers. That was kind of done as a money-saving technique when the original system was purchased, and that's what the radios roam between sites means. It is also uses an EDAX protocol. EDAX is a protocol just means basically the language that the radios speak to one another with. It's a specific language that only this vendor can talk. So that's what we're trying to move away from with the new system. The new system is going to be a P25 Phase 2 protocol. So the language is going to be an open language, and it allows any brand of radio to hop onto our system as long as we allow it. It will also support Phase 1 and Phase 2 radios. Phase 1 is the older version of P25. That's just kind of in there just to let you know. Now, during the migration process, we're going to keep EDAX, that language, just to make the ease of transition, so there's no downtime with the system. And also, one of the most exciting things, y'all might not find it exciting, but I find it exciting, is the moving to a simulcast system, which is basically the opposite of the multicast system. Simulcast, the radio is going to be online the entire time. It's going to be on all 3 towers the whole time, so there's that roaming isn't going to happen. It's going to be seamless. When it goes from one tower to the other, there's not going to be a beep or a 5-second delay. It's going to be on constantly. Other benefits of this new system and upgrade is a 3rd tower site that we're adding on the north side of town. It's going to increase coverage, in-building coverage, specifically on the north side, and partly in the central part of town as well, but also it's going to extend us further out north of the city limits. I know they do ambulance runs out to the state school, and they've complained of coverage out there. This is going to tackle that head on. With these type of radio systems, they're no longer just radios and a repeater. You have computers backing them up, and computers are a big part of the infrastructure. Right now we have about 4 computers in a rack that are serving this system, keeping the database of the users, recording call activity. With this new system, we're going to a virtualized solution. And what virtualized means is you put many servers on one box. So we're going to have one high-dollar, high-reliability box that's going to have 4 servers residing inside of one box. That's what virtualization means. The radio, how the dispatchers dispatch calls is computer controlled now, and they actually grab a mouse and they click when they want to key up, or they can use their headset mic. But basically, it's a Windows XP computer that they use. As you may or may not know, XP reached end of life a couple years ago. It's dead in the water. There's really not an opportunity for us just to upgrade these. You have to get whole new systems. But what I want to stress here on these new consoles is that they're solid state, meaning there's no moving parts inside the new consoles. There's no fans. The hard drive is no longer a spindle type. It's a solid state hard drive. There's absolutely no moving parts. And 90% of the time when a computer fails, it's because of a moving part. A fan quits working, or that fan has sucked in too much dust into your computer and it covers something that needs some heat load taken off of it. That's a real important part of this new system. Also, of course, we're going to get new handhelds. As I said, they're reaching end of life. They're getting kind of worn out. We're getting new in-car radios and desktop radios. Now, another thing that I really like about the new system is we're going to get this software called Be On. And basically, it's going to be one of the servers that's going to reside on that virtualized server solution. And it's going to allow us to install an application on a phone, on an iPhone, on an Android, on a computer desktop, that will allow somebody onto our radio system. So if one of the chiefs, myself, or anybody that we allow is outside of the city, outside of the state, even outside of the country, as long as they have a data connection, they'll be able to fire up that app and basically do whatever I give them permission to do. They can just listen, or in the instance of the chiefs, they will have the ability to key up on any channel and talk to their people even when they're out of the state. That's something that we've never had before, and which I know they want and they're really going to utilize. And that's also going to allow us, we reduced the amount of radios that we purchased with this system too. A lot of the people in the city have a radio sitting on their desk taking up space, and they dispatch the animal control guys, they dispatch permits guys, code compliance. I'm going to be able to install an application on their computer to where they can just dispatch. Instead of having to roll away from the computer and go over to the radio, they'll just open up that application and be able to dispatch straight from their computer. One of the big parts that's been brought up quite a bit with us recently is interoperability, which means talking with other agencies. Oops, I need to switch. The main thing I want to stress here is right now we have the ability to talk to whoever we want, when we want. We're going to keep all the current abilities, and right now our preferred method of talking to these other agencies is through the patch system, which y'all have heard me talk about before. Now, that being said, we're adding 3 components that is going to help us out quite a bit. You already heard me talk about P25. We're adding an interop gateway, which is basically just a piece of hardware that's going to allow us to plug anything into it, a radio, a whole new system, a data connection to a remote system that's going to let us communicate with any other agency that we want to talk to. Now, we held several meetings with Tom Green County and a representative who was representing the volunteer fire departments and other surrounding agencies. And what they wanted to do, they requested that we get a VHF repeater that is dedicated, a dedicated way for anybody to talk to us. It'll be a single repeater on one of our towers, and it will be a one-stop shop for coming in to our system. Instead of the way we like to do it, which is create a patch and just become a customer or a user on their system, this is going to allow them to become a customer on our system. Now, we are going to, the company that is giving or selling us this radio system has decided to go ahead and throw this in at no additional charge. So we are going to do the repeater, and we feel this will satisfy any concerns that those agencies have. That's what they recommended. That's what we're going to do.
Mayor, can I ask him a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So on this repeater, and I appreciate you adding this, Bucky, because you and I were in a meeting with the other officials. Will somebody be monitoring this repeater? Because if it's not monitored, it really serves no function. Is that right?
In my opinion, yes. It doesn't serve a function if nobody's going to monitor it.
Okay, so how would we determine then, Mayor or Daniel, how that works? That's really more of a policy issue here within the city? Okay.
Well, if I could, Mayor, that's a good question, Councilmember Grindstaff. My understanding is that there are staffing issues that go with being able to dedicate time to monitor that channel.
But if we're going to do this and we're going to have a better system, we're upgrading, I want to hear about this. I want to cover the staffing too, because this piece of equipment, if everybody agrees that it's kind of the missing piece in the prior proposal, it has to be monitored, or we don't need to be talking about it.
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, I think we would want to get the public safety communications folks up here to help us with that staffing discussion. And the other thing is, I don't think everybody necessarily agrees that there is a missing piece or that this is a missing piece. So this is an accommodation, I think, that this vendor and our staff have developed.
But in his presentation, he says this will satisfy any concerns other agencies have regarding interoperability with the city of San Angelo. Welcome, Chief.
It satisfies their concerns, not our concerns.
Right, but
let me step in. Since PSC is under me, I'll go ahead and address the staffing issues. The whole purpose that we stayed with the patch system that we've had that seems to work for us and keeps everybody happy is because we don't have staff to monitor a specific channel, which we'll call, it's Texas Law 2 is what we're going to call it, but we used to have intercity. And even when we had intercity, we didn't have anybody monitoring that. That was back when I was a dispatcher. So basically it is. We're doing this to satisfy everybody's question, but the reason that we had the patch was so we would know someone was actually there. So if somebody requested this channel, they would call dispatch and say, I need you to patch me through to SO. Then our dispatchers would know we're doing a patch, we would monitor that channel for that time being that their patch is being used. Now we won't be doing that. So they're still going to have to call dispatch and say, I need somebody to go here. The only difference is we're not going to spend the extra 3 seconds doing the patch. It's just going to be there. Did that answer your question? And as far as staffing,
monitoring.
Okay, yeah, I can't increase the staffing any more than what we're approved 25 people.
So it's a council issue.
Well, no. We've got 13 dispatchers right now. We can't keep dispatchers. We can't hire dispatchers, and so we've got 12 vacancies. And even then, if we were fully staffed, I don't know if I would be able to assign someone to monitor a channel that nobody's ever going to use unless there's a critical incident, which at that time we'll be monitoring the channel. It's been a political nightmare, to say the least.
I know, we're all living it with you.
Yep.
But I think it's fair to say that staffing is a concern of yours.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Charlotte?
Chief, you just said you had 12 agencies, and at Officer Hasty's last presentation, he said
Officer
14
Hasty?
agencies.
No, vacancies.
Oh, vacancies. I'm
Vacancies.
sorry, my mistake. But I wanted to ask about the 14 agencies, police enforcement type agencies that we have here in the area. I am real curious to know if this system is going to operate with all 14 of those agencies. That's what you had alluded to before, but in conversations, I don't think that it is. Can you?
The current one does as well, with the patch system. The current one does. With the additional parts that we're adding, the P25 and the interop gateway, it's going to facilitate that to where it's a little bit easier to do so. But the current one does that we have with the patch system. And with adding this VHF repeater, it's just gonna, just one more way. We're adding ways to communicate with these agencies as per their request.
Okay, where is the proposed tower site, the third tower site? Where do you propose putting that?
North side of town, really to the northeast of the Coliseum in a vacant, it's a lot that the city owns that's utilized by the Rodeo Association. They park their trailers there every now and then, and we're going to kind of tuck it away in the corner. We've already got permission. We've spoken with them, and they're okay with it.
Okay, and the tower site, construction in the tower is in this bid amount?
No, ma'am.
Oh, how much is that?
That's on my last page.
Oh, okay. What is the dollar trade-in? You'd mentioned that there was a trade-in for our existing system. What amount is that?
It is approximately $1.45 million, and that's included already in the price.
$1.45 million.
Yes, sir.
So it lowers this 5.7 price. Does it go down? Or?
No, 5.7 is the price. That already includes the discount.
Oh.
But the 5.7 doesn't include the additional 200,000. Let's see, cost. The additional cost for the purchase and construction of the new tower site. So you're estimating that that's going to be approximately 200,000?
Yes, ma'am. And we were funded through this. Funds were approved on January 7th for $6 million, and that was the number that I thought I could get this done with, and I'm nailing it. It's turning out to be a good number.
So we're getting a $7.5 million system for $6 million.
Basically, but we're selling our old stuff too.
Is that your presentation, Buck?
I'd like to talk a little bit about the vendor. They're here with us today. They're an authorized Harris dealer based in San Antonio, Texas. Their name's Daly & Wells Communications Incorporated. We've been working with them since 2007, and these model of radios that we've used have just been fantastic. The police chief and the fire chief will both say this is the brand we want. These radios have just been a great asset to the city. Low failure rate. We've had 100% uptime on the radio system since it was installed, and it's never gone down. Similar systems have been sold in the area to Lubbock, Midland, Lee County, Hobbs, New Mexico, Montgomery County, and some of the bigger cities as well. San Antonio has this system, LA County and City, and Fort Hood also have this system that we're installing. So there's some big cities that, and there's other big cities that haven't officially, they're going through what I'm going through right now, trying to get the contract approved, but this is a good system in big cities. This is top of the line stuff. This is really good stuff. And we went over the pricing, and as I said, $200,000 is going to add not just a tower, but there's also going to be a shelter that has a generator, for the backup power, air conditioner, electrical, and I'm looking at about $200,000 for that. And that's a pretty firm price right now. I'm just waiting for approval, final approval on where I can put the tower.
Bucky, you mentioned Chief Dunn a while ago. Chief, I know you're sitting back there. Would you like to come up here and kind of talk about the system as well? Just get your impressions on that and just get your input, really.
As Bucky said, we've been operating under this since 2007, and I can assure you the firemen will let you know if there's a radio issue in the buildings. We have virtually had no radio issues since we went to this system. Before, we had constant handheld failure. Just skip from the previous system, which is where you have kind of blackout stuff. We've had no problems with this system. The radios have worked fantastic. Bucky was talking, he didn't mention something a little bit about that repeater that they're going to put up. That is not the best solution for that. That severely limits the range. When you do that, the better system, which will utilize all 3 towers, is using that patch. If they choose to put that repeater on there, it will be a very limited area that thing will function in. So, I mean, it was done because they wanted a static channel, but that is not the best way to do it. As he said, I'm not going to have my personnel flipping back and forth between channels when a dispatcher can go volunteer fire 1 wants to talk to fire on channel fire 2, and they can go punch and connect those 2 channels, and no one has to switch a channel, especially when they're in the middle of an operation. Or PD, if they're in a car chase, you don't want an officer sitting over there running 80 mile an hour reaching down flipping in his radio channel when the dispatch can connect the sheriff's office to channel 3 or whatever channel they happen to be operating on. That is a very much a safety issue in that aspect. So,
Chief Dunn, I'm relying on you and Chief Vasquez to tell me that this system is the best safety for the man in the field. I want to know that our officers in the field, if they need help, officer needs help, that they can dispatch, call out, wherever, that this is the better system for that.
This is, and it has been since 2007. We operate under an 800 megahertz system, which for an urban environment such as what police and we operate in, they penetrate the buildings better and get the signals inside buildings. Now, what the sheriff's office and DPS operate under is a 150 megahertz system, which has more range, but it doesn't get into the tighter areas. It's great for the patrol cars running down the highway. It's not the best system for what we use inside this urban environment.
What did we operate prior to 2007? Were we still?
We were on 800 since '94 with E.F. Johnson, I believe, trunking system. Prior to that, it was 150. It's when they started breaking the spectrums up in the mid-'90s.
Rodney, you had a question.
What's the lifespan?
That's
Basically the same as the other one. On the mobiles and portables, around 8 years, and on the infrastructure, 10 to 12 years.
So $750,000 a year for radios.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny?
Bucky, are you getting any feedback from Los Angeles or San Antonio or just any other cities that have used it? Any kinks in the system?
We go to a lot of Daily Wells, make sure that they keep us involved with the users groups. We went to Harris Users Group about a month ago, Sergeant Carpenter and Lieutenant Byrd, and there was fire representatives there too, some of the assistant chiefs, and we talked to hundreds of people that have Harris radios and have this system, and all of them had nothing but positive things to say about it. Harris is real supportive of their system. They treat their customers nice, and not only that, Daily Wells is one of the most supportive organizations that I've ever worked with. They've helped me out in tight spots. They'll have a technician here in 2.5 hours if I've got just a minor problem. They'll have somebody here. They've been a real supportive organization. But from a hardware standpoint, the people that I've talked to love Harris radios and preach them to everybody.
I'm in support of something that gets us out of the dark ages, and if this is compatible to all the other agencies involved in this, Mayor, are you looking for a motion? Because
before we can move forward.
If this includes the purchase and construction of the tower, the whole thing.
I'm going to have to come back with the tower. I don't have the.
Okay, so we're just doing the radio.
Yes, this will get us started. The tower's not slated to break ground
Well,
until
they now
after August.
moved for approval of this item, authorizing city manager to negotiate and execute, communication system with Daily and Wells Communications. And just to state it, I'll make a motion to approve it as is.
As presented.
I'll second that.
Okay. Do I have further comment from council?
I have a question for Chief Vasquez. We're all trying to do the best thing, and we hear a lot of information from the other agencies, and what little I understand, I can understand the 800 megahertz versus 150. It's really a different application, if you will. What they're going to use most, what y'all are going to use most. Can you explain to me, pick another city, Dallas, Austin, Houston, Fort Worth, any of them. can you tell us how those agencies would be, what frequency they would be working on versus what their police department in a more urban, denser environment, fire departments, how they would look?
Almost all municipalities are on 800 megahertz. I mean, that's what everybody's using that. Again, it's the sheriff's departments and the DPS ones that are on the highway, they're using 150, but most cities are using exactly what we're using. Abilene has a system that we're using. They're with Harris or Daily Wells.
And how do they handle the interoperability issue between these two distinct frequencies?
A patch.
Okay.
Explain the patch.
Becky?
No, we want you to do it. No,
okay, I can do it. I can do it. Basically,
I don't. Bucky can. I mean,
yeah, I'll do it. I mean, I'll do it in layman terms. He's a smart guy. The patch basically means is we can communicate with any other agency with any type of radio. We can do that now with our current system. There's been a lot of misinformation talking about our current system that's not factual. We can do that, but we do it with a patch. Basically, you contact dispatch. You say, I need to speak to DPS, okay, to have them meet us on this channel. We patch DPS. Still, the dispatcher has to call the other dispatcher at DPS and tell them have that unit go to this channel, and we communicate via on the radio. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's what a patch is.
It's human communication.
It's what it is. So I made a joke the other day. I said, now all we're going to do is we're going to have the police officer in the street is going to call the sheriff's deputy on their cell phone and say, meet me on this channel so we can talk. And they're going to go to the channel and talk. I mean, basically it's just going to be an open channel all the time instead of us doing the patch, which to me is a safety issue. I like the fact that the officers or deputies or whoever's going to go to this Texas Law 2 has to have the patch, because a dispatcher knows that this officer is leaving their primary channel and going to this channel that's not monitored.
But it's also a time issue. I mean, if you're having to communicate twice for them to get on the same line, that takes time.
Sure, but the patch is, 1, 2, 3, patch, done. But they're still going to have to do that communication with the dispatchers because nobody's monitoring this channel. And this channel, fire will tell you, Brian will tell you that they don't scan their channels because there's too much radio traffic going on. And there's a lot of radio traffic going on. And so if you were to scan that channel or to have that channel in your scan, you're still scanning everything else as well. And it's just troublesome. But, this is our way to accommodate the desires of the other agencies or groups, and if they want that channel, it's not a problem for us.
Any other questions? Public? Yes, sir.
I just got one. Now, we negotiated the price with them?
It's been bid through the HGC by contract. It's a purchasing co-op.
Okay.
The state, I believe the state negotiates those prices for us.
Okay.
All right.
Public comment on this item before we vote.
Houston, Galveston.
Area Council, their COG.
Houston, Galveston.
Houston, Galveston Area.
Council
of Governments. Council of Governments.
And this was budgeted, so.
Motion has been made that we approve this as listed or as written. It has been seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Put a 6-1 on that one. We are now to number 13, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action related to proposals from Catalyst Urban Development and city staff regarding A, recommendation of the DDC board to adopt incentive policy framework as proposed by Catalyst Urban Development and city staff. B, funding for incentive policy program as recommended by DDC board and is proposed by Catalyst Urban Development and city staff. Presentation by Services Director Patrick Howard and A.J. Faber. You are on, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mayor, Council, today you'll hear both from myself and Mr. Howard. Mr. Weiss will also weigh in. We want to keep things moving as quickly as possible. A lot of this information will be familiar to you. If you recall your lunch meeting that you had recently with the Downtown Development Corporation, there was some discussion at that time of an incentive policy, trying to draft a framework for such. And so today we are bringing you some additional information, asking for some action and also asking for some important direction from you at the end of the presentation. We'll go ahead and present items A and B together if that's permissible, to keep us moving a little more quickly. Very quickly, we do want to just start with a little bit of background. We have been discussing the notion of catalytic activity in the downtown development district for quite some time now. We've talked about the importance of that for the district, bringing in and attracting attention and bringing in development that is consistent with the types of development which Catalyst Urban Development has determined based on their market research is certainly viable in that area. So first, we just want to remind you about the importance of looking at catalytic activity in this area. Again, we're trying to attract and leverage some substantial investment in this area. We've had some discussion with you all about some of the previous efforts to bring in some activity, which have been smaller loans, smaller grants through our tiers board, as well as some other functions and sources. What we're looking at today and what we'd like to talk to you about is looking at incentives that are much more substantial in nature and getting your advice and guidance on how we can go about bringing those things into action. So looking at the opportunity to bring catalytic activity into the downtown development district is obviously important because it will bring some new ripple effects to downtown, as Mr. Rutherford talks about in the document that was in your background report. He specifically mentions the opportunity to both advance the city plans and visions for this area while starting with a larger project that then brings other people to the table, creating a center of activity that will produce dividends for the city, specifically as we're looking at property values and the generation of taxes in that area. So we'll go very quickly through that slide. Again, there are several sources of support that's been demonstrated by members of this council and previous councils, recognizing that catalyst projects are, of course, important for us to pursue and to put some support behind, starting, of course, with our comprehensive plan, which is still currently on the books, adopted as far back as 2009. So we've been talking about this notion for a very long time. That plan specifically talks about the importance of bringing catalyst investments to target financial gaps on key projects, and the financial gaps we'll talk about here in just a moment. The comprehensive plan goes on to talk about the benefit of catalyst concepts, both in the combination of jobs and housing, commercial activity that's generated, as well as also bringing a sense of place and some pedestrian activity to the area. And that plan actually identified 8 different key catalyst concepts. That theme has been consistent, carried forward to 2012, where COSA DC funded a strategic plan, which specifically in its implementation chapter calls for creating a proactive incentive program for public-private partnership to, again, bring catalysts to downtown area. And again, in 2013, the Downtown Development Commission, as well as this group, approved and adopted the Downtown Master Development Strategic Plan, which identified those 3 areas I mentioned at the top of the presentation, specifically residential, restaurant, and workplace infill for the area. The realities of developing in the city center has been a hot topic of conversation with this group, the Downtown Development Corporation, the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone, and some other groups, as well as internally. The realities of developing in this area that we have to acknowledge and identify ways to help leverage funding for to bring those projects in include not only the aging infrastructure in the area. There are some considerations that need to be recognized as far as the downtown area being built out. The existing building siding and the layout of the area is a challenge in some circumstances and would need some participation from the city perhaps. The nature of the historic fabric that we have, trying to maintain that and to encourage infill of existing buildings is an important consideration. We also have to face the limitations that there are for parking, and we've talked about that in the past with this group, as well as the financing to achieve this. So in short, the reality that we're asking you to recognize is that in order for these developers to leverage or borrow the funding needed for the projects, they must be able to justify to their lenders that there will be a return on investment. And that guarantee is not possible on their part if there is a financial gap that exists. How do we address the financial gap? We've touched the surface on that, talking about a variety of different incentive proposals that we could utilize. And Mr. Howard's going to come up and talk to you about some of the different tools in the toolbox, so to speak, that we're asking you to endorse today. And we'll talk about at the end of the presentation the specific items for direction that we need you to give us some additional guidance on today.
Good morning. As AJ alluded to, downtown development is challenging. This is not just germane to San Angelo downtown. Many cities across the country experience challenges as it relates to downtown development and revitalization. So as the plan talks about, there are techniques that are included within the framework that we believe will get us there in terms of seeing revitalization actually occur. And so what I'd like to share with you briefly is just two scenarios, one of which talks about adaptive reuse with an existing building and how typically you'll experience a gap with respect to adaptive reuse. And additionally, the same will hold true for new construction as well. So the bottom line is, the takeaway is that there will be a gap, and so what I'd like to do is just briefly sort of run through this with you. The illustration talks about a 33 square foot building. Of course, there are costs that are associated with the purchase of a building, and then there's obviously the improvements that need to be made. So when you think about those things, additionally, you will look at the revenues that may be created as a result of how much you could lease the space for or what the space would be worth. And then you would look at what reasonably you could need or would have as it relates to a suitable return on investment. There's an industry standard as it relates to borrowing money, and so there is an expected type return of investment, and we're using here 8.5%. So what you see there is a supportable acquisition price of $339,000, and the illustration would suggest that would be what you would consider as it relates to what would be reasonable in terms of cost for such a development. So the bottom line is the gap would be the difference between the sales price of the building and the supportable acquisition cost. So this is just an example of what we would be experiencing or have experienced, obviously looking at adaptive reuse, something that we want to encourage in the downtown, and the bottom line is there will be a gap, and that would be something that would have to be determined, but certainly this is what we've experienced and others experience all around the country. The second scenario just relates to new construction. Obviously, there's no acquisition costs involved, but there are certainly other costs related to the construction of a new building. There are land acquisition costs, development costs, and then you look at the revenues related to leasing of the space, cost for operation, and the return, which is again what the industry standard would suggest would be reasonable or expected when you're talking about borrowing money to do new construction. So in this case, the gap would be more refined or defined as somewhere around $673,000. And so in each scenario, whether you're talking about new construction or infill or adaptive reuse, there will be generally a gap, and that's what many have experienced. So what the framework talks about is using some of the existing tools that we've been using already to look at downtown revitalization, the first of which being tax increment financing. So we've used it, as you can see here, in a number of ways to encourage revitalization and redevelopment. One of the things that we found out, though, over the past year or so is that we may need to be, we need to be less prescriptive as it relates to how those funds are expended and allow development activity to occur with potential developers making us aware of what those needs are, and we allowing their creative, having the creative ability to address those as needed. So we would want to recommend modifying our policies to be less restrictive, and I think many would, the Tiers Board would agree as we've been working through that this past fiscal year. The other thing that we would suggest is that there are many creative uses for tax increment financing, and we need to explore many of those as we probably just scratched the surface as it relates to the use of tax increment financing. So we talked about tax abatement being one of the tools, looking at land costs, maybe the potential of land assembly or conveying land is a potential. Looking at developing a robust industrial development program, looking at the funds that are through the half-cent sales tax that are allocated to Coastal DC, which is under the Chapter 4B. We are suggesting that we consider the potential of a Chapter 4A as well, in addition to looking at other tools like new market tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, historic rehab credits. HUD has mortgage insurance programs. There are EDA grants that are available as well. And so the framework that is before you for consideration includes all those tools. So now I'm going to let Mr. Wise come and talk to you about what is asked of you today.
In your background information, you'll notice a lot of those tools we go. So there's a whole list of options that hopefully you've had some time to look at, and we can go over those individually. But what we're looking for today is specifically guidance on those areas. Are those specific areas that you would like to utilize? If not, if there are ones in there, for instance, let's say it's land assembly or whatever it may be, that those are things we don't really want to offer as tools as we try to bring in development, then we need to take those off so that when we end the process with this phase 2, we have a clear definition of what those items are that we want to try to utilize to incentivize. Secondly, aside from that, which is huge today, we definitely need an answer on, there's a lot of other questions that we need to think about, whether they're answered today specifically or not. And those pertain to any edits to the document. As you know, it has gone before the DDC, who has reviewed the document and endorsed the document itself as a plan. So we want to know if there are any other edits you see that we need to make as final. Secondly, one of the notions that was brought forward is the council interested in doing any use of additional funding? We've talked about these type of tools as incentives, but we've also talked about the idea of cash as an issue to address some of these things. So is that a notion you want to entertain? If so, what type of level would we look at, and what are the sources you would like us to look at for that? We talked about the acquisition of key properties. Is that something that we're interested in doing or not? We also need to look at the collaboration between the various entities, and I'm assuming that's something you'd want staff to work on. We have a variety of boards working on things. We have, of course, Downtown San Angelo doing the work they do. We have the DDC, the Downtown Development Commission. We have the Tiers Board, who are working on grants for facades to larger things now, and now this under the DDC as far as the master development portion itself. And then we also need to talk about, as all of those things come together, one thing you'll notice in this study is that it's recommended that we actually have one central source for all of that to come through, so we make sure we're all working on the same page, all the boards are working in unison. So we really need to look at the development of staff position for that. All of the plans are great, but if we don't have the staff to administer it, for instance, we were talking about the tiers grants recently, and those are wonderful. We've got larger projects potentially, but now you've got to monitor those grants to make sure what is being done, what the grant was given for, is actually happening. So it doesn't just happen. The same thing goes along with this master development plan. As we get projects that come in, it takes a position to actually to work on that and make sure that we're moving forward, as we said. So that's sort of the framework for discussion, and we're here to answer questions and get direction and hopefully some action today.
Where are we going to start? Who wants to start it?
And you may want to start with that, you know, the list of things in your background as far as what we're potentially using as the tools. I think the DDC, of course, has endorsed those, but.
Do we want public comment first, or we want to discuss first?
That's a good idea. I was going to ask.
Rick, I want to start with the last item. Organizationally, the designation and creation of a staff position. What would you need, where are you going to get it, and how long would it take?
You know, I may have to discuss that a little with Daniel. We haven't, you know, it's budget time is coming up, so this is a good time to be discussing that. My point would be is that if this is a priority and we indeed are serious about moving forward with development within downtown and trying to push that forward, then we'll have to look at where we can get that from. And as far as how long it's needed, Ms. Grindstaff might be good at answering some of those too, because she's worked through a little bit of that in Abilene as they went through some downtown development. But I think that is a position that would be there for a while.
Well, what level of expertise, I guess, that's what I'm asking, would you be looking for to draw from to fill that position?
I'm a big fan of, I don't want to, price this out of a range, but I also think we need to pull someone in who is knowledgeable in managing that type of information and projects. You can't just pull anybody in and say, well, here you go. But ideally, someone who has had some experience in downtown development and someone who has some experience in managing projects, similar like when you're pulling in grants and those kind of things, but you're making sure that they have to be a very good coordinator and those type of things. So I can't give you a dollar range right now.
I wasn't looking for that. It's just an idea of the level of a staff person that you would need to complete and be on top of the project and other projects, not just this project.
That's a good point. So, you're talking mid-range. It doesn't have to be a director type position, but it's got to be someone who's had some experience in the area.
We've come a long way from when we authorized this guy to come in and look what we could do with our downtown area and bring us someone to build. And now we're talking about a full-time position just to monitor it?
Oversee it.
I'm not saying it's a full-time position to just monitor that, but I am saying that if you're serious about actually giving out grant dollars such as we're doing with the tiers, and that's wonderful, we're talking about development, but I don't feel comfortable giving out a lot of dollars and so forth if we don't have the staff to actually cover and monitor that and make sure that those things are being adhered to as we want them to. We can do it, but I don't want to set staff up for failure, giving them more than they can handle, and then things aren't monitored correctly.
How about some public comment? Let's see what the people say out there.
Mayor, I was going to say that, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but I know Jim's back there. If he'd care to weigh in on any of this conversation, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, I'd like to hear public comment.
Well, thank you. My name's Jim Cummings, and I'm one of your co-chairmen of the Downtown Development Commission. Let me say this, that your Downtown Development Commission, we recommend to you unanimously these incentives, this package for you. Let me say that we here in West Texas, we are all blessed to live here in San Angelo. We have a beautiful river. We have a wonderful West Texas heritage, caring, friendly population. But all of these elements are not enough to incent a high level of venture capital to come into our city. As was stated, and correctly so, venture capital investors are looking for a return on their investment. And we here in San Angelo, we are competing against, I don't know how many cities our size in this country looking for the same thing. Yes, our river, our West Texas heritage, our friendly, caring population, those are additive. But we've got to have an incentive package that will give these venture capitalists an opportunity to maximize a return to their investors. Is this incentive package complete? Is it total? No. I'm hoping that at some future date that we, as your Downtown Development Commission, can stand in front of you and say, we've got this project, we've got these developers, but they need this. And can we give it to them? So I'm hoping that will be a goal of ours. And so that's where we're heading. But this allows us to at least give our master developer and other developers that want to come into our city with projects that will take one of these beautiful old downtown buildings that are vacant and that will renovate them and rehabilitate them, get them full and producing something economically. We need an incentive package to help them do that. So we wholeheartedly recommend this to you. With regard to the staff person, I would have to defer to Rick and his folks on that issue, but there will need to be some coordination and someone keeping their eye on the ball, especially if we have a number of developments going on, and that will be wonderful. I wish we had a handful going on right now, but we'll need someone that will keep the eye on the ball and make sure that all the criteria are being met and meeting the expectations for the incentives that they're receiving. Thank you for the opportunity of serving you. We serve at your pleasure, your Downtown Development Commission. We serve at your pleasure, but thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve you in our city.
Thank you, sir. Do I have further public comment? Hi, ma'am.
Hello, Brenda Gunter, President of Downtown San Angelo, Inc. We have been blessed since 2005 with tremendous growth and redevelopment in our downtown area. And with every little entity that someone has invested in has made a huge difference, whether it was the Sealy Flats, whether it's the Fifi Dubois, whether it is Fat Bosses, whether it's Miss Hattie's, whether it's the Eggemeyers. Each of these projects have been catalytic in terms of other people being interested in development in the downtown area. I believe we're at a point in our lives in downtown development that unless we have some major catalytic projects, we're going to be at a time period when we won't continue to see the growth and development that we have seen over the past 10 years. And when I say that, I say there are a couple projects right now that are out there, one being the Roosevelt Hotel and two being the Townhouse Hotel, that are very catalytic in terms of the nature of what they can change in our downtown area. If they don't get developed, no matter what else you do, our Downtown San Angelo, Inc. redevelopment will halt in terms of the progressiveness of what's going on. Those projects are catalytic in terms of what they can create. At the same point in time, the interest level is there. People have bought into the projects. They're passionate about the projects, and if you don't have passion, you can't do historic redevelopment. At the same point in time, they have to work with bankers, and they have to work with finance people, and there's a point in which they've reached out and found that their availability of dollars and funds needs support from other programs and from the support of the City of San Angelo. There are things like Section 108 programs. There are things like 380 programs. There are lots of things out there that are available to help us get these projects done. But there is gap financing, and we've got to acknowledge that gap financing exists. These people, as passionate as they are about it, still have to bring a black line to the bottom line, and they're going to need our support, and we have to determine whether the redevelopment of key projects like the Townhouse Hotel, the Roosevelt Hotel, the Trimble Bacher Building, the Beauregard Tower Building are important projects to us. Because if we can't decide to do that, those buildings which have been vacant for decades will continue to be vacant for decades. And I can't imagine a successful redevelopment of downtown if those four key projects aren't part of the plan and the process. Because if they're not done, when you drive through downtown, what do you see? What are you going to feel? What's it going to look like? We've got to have a priority in terms of what we think the vision is for redevelopment. And it takes catalytic projects, and it takes buildings that existed there. They're going to continue to deteriorate to a point when they're going to topple. If we don't do something relatively soon to get some investment behind these projects, we're going to be at a point when no amount of money will solve the problem. And I can't imagine a historic downtown area without a Townhouse Hotel, a Roosevelt Hotel, a redevelopment of the Trimble Bacher, and the Beauregard Towers. When you look at the skyline of downtown and look at those buildings, what's the first thing you see when you drive through downtown? Those buildings are pretty prominent. Do we want them to stay in the level of disrepair that they're in now and deterioration, or do we really want to do something to make those buildings come back to life? And those buildings, if they get redeveloped, will be the total catalyst you need to bring additional development. They're key component parts to our redevelopment of downtown San Angelo. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, council members, I know sometimes we get hung up on current revenues and allocating monies, especially right now. I know the gap as far as financing, there's going to be we're going to have skin in the game is what it comes down to, ultimately. I know that we forego current revenues for the future. It's an investment on our part. This is my perspective on it, that in the future, what we look at is increases in property values by what we do today. Also increases in sales tax revenues and other revenues that the city will benefit from what we do today. There's a lot that's been presented as far as what's available incentive-wise, and it'd be very wise of us to really consider this in making sure that we do have those tools available to make sure that we have that gap covered. And I think it's really important that we take that very seriously today.
Do I have further public comment on this item?
Mary Casper. She spoke about banks running out of money. San Angelo lost $55,000 in sales tax money lately. There is now a per capita debt for the city of San Angelo of over $1,900. You're talking about more bond issues for the police department, also for other major projects. Talking about hiring somebody to clean up the waterways because of all the trash with the rain and everything else. When is the citizens of San Angelo going to run out of money to fund some of these projects? Yes, they're very good, but I looked at the packet, the entire packet, and unfortunately, I left it on my kitchen counter this morning when I left. They're asking the city of San Angelo to guarantee some of these gaps. And when a restaurant is running a gap for the financing of over $700,000, and another building $600,000, and another building, pretty soon you're talking about not pennies, you're talking about real money here. It's all very, I am for the downtown rehabilitation and everything else. It's, but it's got to be private money and quit being the government money. It's our money. It's not the city's money, it's the taxpayers' money. And that's my concern. It's the entire buildup, which is where you're hitting everybody in the pocketbooks. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz?
We don't represent a faceless entity. We represent the taxpayers. Every day we make decisions that we believe to be in the best interest of the taxpayer. We willingly take on debt as an organization, just like we do in our personal life when we decide to buy a house and finance it, or we buy a car to finance it, or a boat, and I can go downhill from there. We do that willingly. If you don't like what we do, please run for office. This isn't as easy as it looks. But I think that doing nothing really does not serve our community well. We're allowed by state law certain tools, certain opportunities. And the reason that I would be interested in using them is if I believe the rate of return on those is in the public's best interest, in the taxpayer's best interest. If we can look at a gap that generates potentially 3 to 4 times the economic benefit of that investment, that's great. I also believe, though, that we have to be very judicious in how we do that and make sure that there are clawback provisions, et cetera, so that we're not risking taxpayer dollars. I personally am very committed to this project, and the presentation I thought was outstanding. We are flapping in the breeze if we're not going to talk about skin in the game, as it was said at the other end of the table. So I think that we need to look at, perhaps at least right now, leave everything on the table that's been mentioned. I'm not ready to be selective. I also think in a developing a program like this, we need to hear from Tina and we need to hear from Michael, because this isn't just a planner activity. This is a far-reaching activity. And, you know, whether it's tax abatement for 15 years or looking at the Section 108 and what that does, let's keep all tools in the toolkit. I know that Ms. Gunner is very concerned that we are going to put new construction and new development ahead of revitalization, restoration in our historic city. I will never do that, Brenda. But I want her to have the same opportunity, and I want her organization to have the same opportunity at finder's fees and things like that. I don't want any of this to be at the detriment of another organization. I think we're all truly working to the same end. So, you know, I say if you're looking at a piece of property, a raw piece of property on the river, that might be a tax abatement, significant tax abatement project. That may not be what we do with a historic structure that gets 108 or something like that. I think that we just need to stay very open-minded, and as long as this group is committed to not putting one in front of the other, I really do think there's enough opportunity for all. Is there going to be a time when we run out of money? This was all about catalytic projects. It was never doing this for every building downtown, but truly weighing the benefits of certain significant projects that then would, as the term refers, bring other investment and private investment without public dollars potentially involved. So I'm all for it. I'm sorry we've wasted this much time. I think it's, you know, it's a fish or cut bait situation, and I'm ready to go fishing.
I agree with everything she said. I would like to see the city appoint an individual to write the guideline, just like you would write for a loan program that you're going to do in your bank or whatever, and possibly with Jim's help, we could write a guideline, just like she said, one that would have various incentives if it's on the river project and monies in the source that could be used, and another for an existing building where monies could be used and what type of tax abatements, that we need those written guidelines, and we need to do it now. We need to get started and have that base so that we can kick it off.
Further comment from council? Well, I do have a couple of questions here. Are we speaking about incentives to rebuild downtown buildings, or are we speaking about commercializing the most unique river in the entire world? Because I don't want to see our river look like San Antonio. We spent $14 million of citizens' money to put walkways and to stabilize our banks and to make our river something that is utilized for every citizen in this town. I don't want our river to look like San Antonio. I don't want it to be, when you walk down the river, you're walking in somebody's backyard. And I'm very much opposed to that. Now, if we're talking about some incentives for downtown buildings that are just sitting there vacant that need some work, then that's one thing. If we're talking about commercializing our river, that's something else. So what's the breakdown here?
Well, Mr. Mayor, as you alluded to, I think there is a plan for the river, there's a plan for downtown, and as the plan suggests, there are areas of opportunity. So you're looking at infill opportunities where there's vacant land, where there's development that could occur. It could potentially be on the river. However, it's not, it's not limited to the river per se. We're talking about all of the center city, as we're calling it in the plan, because it really expands beyond just the downtown proper. So you're talking about redevelopment opportunities, adaptive reuse, infill, all those things that need to occur for revitalization to be whole within the city.
Well, I don't have a problem with doing some incentives if someone wants to come in and rebuild one of the old buildings downtown. I don't have a problem, with that. Let's help them. But I do have a problem with incentivizing people that want to come in here and build on our river, because I want to protect that river.
Right. The other thing I was mentioned is that you all will have the opportunity, obviously, to weigh in on the individual projects. So it's not as if there won't be transparency as it relates to the significance of the project. Again, we're not talking about every project as Ms. Grindstad referred to. We're talking about a catalytic project. So you'll have the opportunity to see projects, see the relative worth, look at what the return on the investment is, and that's what you'd expect the staff to bring forward to you with a recommendation. So it should be fully vetted, and when it comes to you, you'll have the ability to understand what the basis for recommendation was.
Any other council?
I'll add that I'm totally with you, Mayor. I mean, I believe, the bottom line is we are going to have some kind of skin in the game. But I also believe that what we have now as a downtown, we have a lot of eyesore buildings around downtown, and I think those need to be looked at first. I do believe that anything we build, we really, and I'm glad he's telling us we're going to have the final say-so, because I think the attraction to our downtown, to the city of San Angelo, is vital. Whether, the folks that come in and buy gas and go to restaurants and all, we need to make it a little bit more attractive. But at the same time, I think we need to really look hard at filling in, or the infill idea of some of the existing buildings that are out there. They're just, in dire needs of repair. So it's a balancing act. We're going to have some kind of new construction, but at the same time, I hope we look at just revitalizing any of the old stuff that's out there. So that's just, we're going to have some kind of skin in the game, whether it be a tax abatement, whether it be us funding, giving some kind of funding source to whoever. I think it's going to need to happen.
So what you're asking for today is that we authorize you to put together something with dollar amounts and what it would cost and what the incentives would be, and that you would bring them back to us for discussion and approval? Is that what you're asking for?
Well, I think there's multiple things. The first thing is you have a plan in front of you that is presented from the DDC and is proposed for adoption. So it has a list of all of those incentive options in it. So we're looking for you to say, yes, that's okay, we want to accept that. That doesn't mean you have to use all those incentives, but it says if a developer comes to us, we have a list of things we know that you will at least consider. And so we can work with them to develop something.
Mayor.
At the end of the day, it comes back to you for approval or not. Now, aside from that, that's the one thing I'd like action on. The other, if you want to give us direction to come, if you want to say that restoration is a higher priority than new construction, then we can try and craft some sort of general guidelines that we go by and bring those back to you. But this is basically the format in this report.
But don't we need some figures as far as how many years abatement, what percentage abatement, how much don't we need some concrete figures to work with before we start approving this? I do.
Those figures will have to come with each project.
Yeah.
Each project will be different. And so those will be individual depending on what it is. If it's a huge project, you may be willing to do abatement in a longer period of time than some little bitty project.
Mayor?
So those will be individual.
Yes, ma'am.
When we did this in Abilene, what we would do is we would look at the magnitude of the project and then quantify what we believe to be the public benefit. So you're going to see them somewhat, or could, depending on what we agreed to, on an individual basis. But I think what we need to look at today in this plan is it mentions a variety of tools. And if we're good with that, we leave them out there, and then staff, and I mean, to me, this is heavy in finance, comes to us and says, here's what we would recommend. They're not leaving it simply to the planners, because there's a huge financial impact of this. And then we decide where we're comfortable and where we're not. But I guess in truth, what we need to do is say if there's something we're completely uncomfortable with, we take that out right now. Right now, I don't want to do that. I'd like to leave as many things on the table as we can. Also, I think, weren't you and Charlotte and Johnny involved in the discussion about a raw piece of land on the river? And wasn't that the impetus for the Downtown Development Commission? So this council, has had some commitment to new development, but I think we need to start looking at the river and downtown as being less separate and something that can really support one another. And again, not one at the expense of the other. But I think there's enough tools here, I really do, that we can help both and potentially simultaneously.
Yes, sir.
And you're right, Elizabeth. Whenever it was first brought to us, we had no idea of the schematic that was brought, it was a drawing, and I agree with you. I don't think we need a bunch of brick walls along the river with
That
us
river belongs
walking.
to our citizens.
We were blown away by the design. We had no idea what was coming our way. And I was going to add something else. Yes, where is Parish Rutherford on all these discussions? I mean, is he missing in action? Is he still?
This plan, of course, is presented to us by them. His contract is real specific about the number of site visits and so forth. So he presented, at the last time, which was basically this plan. The problem with that presentation was it did not ask for clear action.
That's what
which
we're
is
here
what we're
for.
doing today.
Okay.
So his contract allows him a certain number of visits. The staff is certainly capable of understanding and presenting that. That's why we're doing it today, because he's used his visits already.
But again, I think that the plan that was first presented to us, and Charlotte will remember, she's not there. But anyway.
She can hear you.
Okay, it was just it totally changed the face of downtown, along the river, but the brick walls and our, it just seemed like we were just covering up our river with all that new idea of the new buildings, new construction, so.
It was a building.
Now, I can understand something like maybe a hotel between the Chadbourne and Irving Street Bridge, somewhere in there, but.
Can you please clarify?
Did you ever see that drawing? Did you see that?
It's all conceptual, but what we started with was a piece of land that the Health Foundation was involved with.
Yes.
And that's why the Downtown Development Commission was created, to look for a developer for that, period. We're not talking about doing anything more to the river than what we've already invested millions of dollars in. What we're talking about is, here is a privately owned piece of property. What do we think has the greatest synergistic effect for the whole downtown area?
In that same breath, and Elizabeth is right on the initial property. As the master developer went through, and you'll see in your report, they look at how to combine a variety of things to make your downtown or city center vibrant, whether that's commercial or housing or all those things. So while you'll see a variety of projects, housing, for instance, was one that was looked at, or retail for that particular piece of property. There are also other properties along the river that they have identified, not just along the river, but in all of downtown. So you will see proposals like that could come forward. I think in order for the downtown and city center to be vibrant, you've got to focus somewhat on that river, because that's what we've done in the past with our plan. And do we need to have some housing on it? I think so. I think that's a huge sell for San Angelo. We need it downtown as well. Where that would be and how much, that's still to be decided by you. So you would see each of those projects come before you, and then you can decide.
And one thing we've talked about too is like the idea of the easement that remains on that side of the river, so it stays public. No one's trying to sell the river. We're just trying to, I think we all want to maximize the beauty of it and have more people experience that. But I think historically, because the river was not the amenity that it is now, how many years ago? 20 years ago, it was a problem. Now we want downtown to interface with the river. And I sincerely believe that everything that Brenda wants and other entities or individuals want is to see all of it healthy and all of it, vibrant. And we'll never be successful with new construction, a new project on the river, if all of the older buildings stay vacant and blighting. I mean, we've got to look at this holistically, and we have got to, cooperate, and I think be open to a number of different financing tools that we, to this date, have tried to ignore.
And I do want to caution against limiting our incentives to just certain type of projects. It has to really open up to whether it's a new construction, depending on what it is. The more that we have available to us, and without those limitations on the certain type of projects, that can be determined at a later date as far as what type of project will be most beneficial to this community. But and looking at the incentive package, we do like, as far as staff, what has been presented to us. I know it went to the DDC, and they also approved And we do recommend that we move forward with what we have as far as incentive package without those limitations as to which projects those incentives will actually be used for.
Marty, do you have anything?
But as I understand it, each one will stand on its own.
Yes. Yeah.
That's correct.
I move we move forward.
Second. I was on kind
Do we have a motion? We do have a second. Do we have any further comment from the council?
Other than I pulled back our original resolution and plan with the foundation, and we're totally in line. We're not pigeonholing just one project, so.
No.
Are we on A and B?
Yes, we took them together unless
Do
you
them
want
together.
separate.
Do I have further public comment before we vote on this? Motion is made that we accept this as presented. It has been seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And nays? There's going to be one nay here. I don't like this open-ended stuff. Let's move on.
Mayor, as a point of clarification,
Yes,
I'll
sir.
ask the DDC now to take this. You've given them direction, so we'll work with them to bring whatever else needs to come forward to y'all through the DDC.
You know, the way I remember this, though, is that Paris came in here and said, if you will give me this first stage, I'm going to bring you all sorts of investors, and I'm going to bring you people to town that's going to build. And now this has grown and grown and grown. It's completely unrecognizable as to what we initially approved. And I guess that's what bothers me about this whole thing. Let's go on now.
Well, he did change hats in the middle of the game, remember? But he was a planner,
Y'all
turned
were sitting
around,
here.
now I'm an
Let's
investor.
go to number 14, which is discussion and consideration of the recommendation of the Tiers Board to modify the establishing ordinance for this board to allow unlimited reappointment of members by the City Council. AJ?
This will be much shorter. And
Famous
I'll take a
last
sigh of
words.
relief. We are bringing to you a recommendation from the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone, or the Tiers Board. You might remember recently that the Tiers Board has been relocated. It's now being administered through the Department of Planning and Development Services. We noted at the time that the member listing was dated, so we worked with the city clerk to do some extensive research regarding the origin of the membership on the board, because the records were very unclear. Of that, we learned that of the 15 members that are authorized through the ordinance, and my math is incorrect here, instead of 9 members, it's actually 8 members that have expired terms. Of those 8, 3 are eligible for additional terms under the parameters of the existing ordinance. The Tiers members did direct staff to bring forward an item for their consideration and had some extensive discussion about benefits of term limits, the pros and cons, and they did make an official action to recommend an amendment to the ordinance that would allow their members to be reappointed for additional terms in immediate succession without limit. The current limit is 3 terms. In April, they unanimously recommended approval of this ordinance revision and directed us to bring it forward to you, the council. In the background packet and staff report, we outlined the different requirements of the 15 members. Every one of those 15 members has parameters that dictate who would be eligible for that particular seat. The items in red here and italics denote items which those positions need to be filled. So again, of those, we have 8 that their terms have expired. Of those 8, 3 are eligible for reappointment for one more term, leaving 5 for which we have no backups at this time. This is an excerpt from the ordinance. The full content of it is in your background packet, but the change that is recommended really is limited to just this one line. It would strike the line that limits them to 3 consecutive 2-year terms, and would instead replace it with the language that the members may again be reappointed for additional terms in immediate succession without limitations. Today we have drafted this just as a discussion item for you. It is not a first reading. You have several options that you can take, and so we're asking for your direction here. First of all, of course, you can opt for further discussion on the item either today or at a future meeting. You could accept the recommendation of the Tiers Board and direct staff to prepare a formalized amendment for first reading at a future agenda. You could, of course, begin with the pursuit of reappointment and replacement of the members whose terms have expired, Or lastly, of course, you could delay any action until you have a joint session with the Tiers Board if that's a desire that you have. That's really the content of the presentation. We really just want to hear your discussion and your direction, and if you have any questions, I can take those now. We do have some members of the board in attendance as well that can speak on the behalf.
AJ, item number 3 is with the understanding that we stay with what we currently have in our ordinance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And understand, I'm glad you brought that up, understand too that the way that the ordinance is written, members serve until they are replaced. So I know one of the fears of the Tiers Board membership was having a large-scale replacement all at one time, and you of course would have the option to stagger that because the members can agree to stay on until they are replaced. So you do have considerable control in the timing and the pattern at which these members are replaced.
And the staggering point is a good point to bring up. That might assist.
Yes, that is a good option.
And the way it's written right now, I think the board members have to lay off a year.
Correct.
Before they could be reappointed.
Correct.
Rodney?
A couple of things that I see on this. One is that this board voted in favor of allowing themselves to be on this board basically indefinitely unless you have a council person remove them from the board or replace them on the board. I'm not in favor of this. I think the system we have in place is good that we have right now. 3 terms I think is plenty. We should be asking other individuals to come in and have different points of view anyways so that we don't have the same 15 people that are in this job indefinitely. I'd be more in favor of pursuing to the replacements. I think we should be hunting hard for those things, and I hope somebody's watching this that it's not on the board that would like to be on the board that fits the parameters of what you have to be in order to be on this board.
Elizabeth?
I had 3 members, or no less than 3 members of the Tiers Board call me and say, please don't support this. I think they didn't feel comfortable in the meeting speaking, and that's why I had some questions of Patrick and exactly how this occurred, which, you don't have to get up. It's safer to stay there, I promise. But I agree with Councilman Fleming that I don't think this is necessary. I think it's very contradictory to the idea of turnover, and it's really not like most of our other boards, and I don't think this is the direction that I want to see us go in. I'd rather see turnover, new blood, and involving more people in the community as appropriate.
Anyone else?
Yes, I too had a couple of phone calls from Tiers Board members that basically said the same thing. They just didn't feel comfortable speaking against this and asked me not to support it. That concerns me when a board member doesn't speak out on a board. That concerns me. I want to ask someone on staff if they can recall when this board was designed, weren't there guidelines from the federal government that we had to follow for this board?
State.
Does anyone recall?
Tax increment financing in the state of Texas is governed by Section 311 of the local government code. So there are specific guidelines related to how they operate. In terms of the composition of the board, it doesn't speak to that, ma'am.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I did not get a call from anybody, but Without Limit kind of sent out a red flag for me, and I do not believe in Without Limit at all. I'm not comfortable with that, so I'm opposed to it.
Anyone else for a call for public comment? Marty, do you have any thoughts on it?
No.
Lucy, do you have any thoughts?
No, sir.
Public comment on this item.
I'm Craig Myers, and I probably am a very lonely person because over the last 6 years, I've been at 2/3 of the Tiers Board meeting, which has been very interesting. And I have to say that I was received as a member of WTOS as a very, in a very gracious way, a lot of collaboration, welcoming the kinds of input that we had. We were primarily there because on the northern tier section, Chadburn, it's surrounded by the 2 blighted areas that we have been strongly involved with in terms of neighborhood revitalization. Also, I applaud the achievement, the major achievement, which was the tiers' participation and contribution to downtown revitalization. We support it 100%, and we think that the streetscapes combined with the amenities that were provided have gone a long way toward making the revitalization downtown more possible. With that being said, I really strongly oppose this for a couple of reasons. And there's a radical difference between term limitations in elected people and appointed people. Elected people have their terms, they're taken away from them every election cycle. People have a chance to indicate that they are satisfied or not satisfied. These people are for life unless they really do something obscene that offends either the person who appointed them or otherwise. But my problem is that people know what they know, and they see what they know, and they do what they do based on that. And if you look at the people who are appointed up there, this came up very early, and that's why they separated the north and south zones of the tiers board. Because if you look up there, not only the people coming from a number of voting districts, but people from ASU, people from SISD, people from the base. Most of the people on this have affinities with either by residence, social, or financial, or economic interaction with people in the government, downtown, the economic, the legal system, etc. And so we found that the northern side, even though they generate far more tax income than downtown, was finding that they were treated not fairly early on. And so the decision was made to separate these two. Now, there have been two major projects undertaken by the current board. No bias. I'm not, impugning anybody's integrity or anything. But the facts of the matter are that early on, the Chadbourne Streetscape project was designed. It was had its conceptual work. Jerry C. and myself walked from the bypass up to Walmart 3 separate times, both sides of the street, stopping at every business at the bequest of the city staff to try to generate some enthusiasm from those people that would get them on board with this streetscape. And we had meetings, those people came, they were promised that this was going to happen, and by golly, it hadn't happened. In fact, not only the conceptual stuff, but a template was provided when 3 blocks near 19th Street were shown as the model of what they wanted to happen. This was before there was any conceptual work on downtown. And so as they talked about what kinds of decorations they wanted on the benches that have never appeared, all these different kinds of things, enough money has passed through in the last 7 years the Tiers bank account on the north side to have completed this, along with the grants that were provided at the time. Enough money has come to complete the whole thing. But even though it came on board later, downtown, more complicated, relocating utilities and all of this, was completed. And then Tiers money, even though there's 3 blocks south of Houston Hart that are technically in the Tiers section, that's not a part of the priority up there. But money from the north side was come down there because that completed the conceptual expectations of the street landscapes on the south. Nothing has been done illegally, nothing has been done immorally, but just because of who people are and what they know, there's one project that's been unfinished that started before the others that is as desperately needed up there as any of the things are downtown. And so it seems to me that what you have is the need for a continuation of new people who come in, also people who have an understanding of an obligation to the whole of the 2 tiers zones. And one further thing, the fear that they're going to lose the continuity that comes from 5 people out of 15, that's the ideal. that if you have 5 people coming on, 5 people going off, 5 people who have some experience, that's the best rotation to see that you have an active, dynamic board. And I would make this suggestion: as competent as the people are who've served on the board, as much as they deserve our gratitude and appreciation for what they have accomplished, this isn't rocket science. They don't have to know engineering, they don't have to know construction, they don't have to know finance, and they don't have to know legal and zoning, because that's what the staff is there to see that it happens. They look at what's needed, they collaborate with the people who are involved and find out what their input is, they design some projects, and then they give them to other people, and they oversee the financing of it to see that it's done. And I tell you, there's been about 60 meetings in these last 6 years. They haven't met every month. And in those 60 meetings, immaculate minutes have been taken. They're about 2 pages long. The financials are right up there so that you can see exactly where the money has come from, what's done with it, and you can put those 2 things together, and after about 2 nights reading, taking time out to watch Survival or something, you can be up to speed on what is happening. I think far more important than experience doing the same things over and over, what we need are new people to say, how can we catch up, reassign our priorities, and get it done? And I suppose I'm probably 5 minutes or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Floyd Kreider. I don't know if I need a mic maybe for the machine, but I'll try not to use my platoon-sergeant voice. I agree with the 4 comments that I've heard from City Council. My experience and background is military career, education career, and now nonprofits. And when you have appointed people in the military, you want to rotate them. I got rotated like about every 3 years. And there's a reason for that. It wasn't always that way before maybe the turn of the 1900s and whatnot. But they found out that not everybody, just a small percentage of people, there would be problems. You would be affected by influence and affluence, and it would color your decision for that small group of people. But it would be enough of a problem that it might cause catastrophe in the area. They rotate folks in the school district. I mean, so that you have that fresh blood. And in the nonprofit area, I was very satisfied with my board when I founded Galilee Community Development Corporation for affordable housing. I thought they were doing a great job. But when I went to United Way for a grant, Ms. Harrison told us, you know what, you don't rotate your board. We're not too interested in giving you a grant because we know from experience that sometimes there's problems if you don't have that rotation. People get complacent. They get into a rut. There's a familiarity that can sometimes breed contempt. And ultimately, not always, not everybody, I'm not trying to impugn anybody, but your power can corrupt, and absolute power can corrupt absolutely. If you have an appointed situation, there should be a limit on that, and there should be a rotation. It's set up so that you can be off a year and come back. If it's 3 times 2 for a maximum of 6, maybe you want to make it a maximum of 8, so it's 4 times 2. But indefinitely and forever, I get the same red flag that Councilman Silvas mentioned a little earlier, that could be problematic. You can get so entrenched. Rotating is good for the leaders. They get to see different aspects of things. It's good for the element itself, for the organization, and it's good for their mission and for the entire city. It's good for a large pool of people to be involved in a variety of things. One suggestion I might make is that the city might actively promote board application. I presume, and people that I talk to in my church and in my community, they have no idea what TIERS stands for or what they do. But there's not a lot of active, that I can see, active explanation of what they do. And that goes for just about all the other boards. I'm on the PHA board. We need to do more to promulgate what we do so people will know. And then maybe you might want to, appoint different people. They would come to you and say, I want to serve on that. You can look at their qualifications and say, yeah, we agree with that. And have some fresh blood and more community involvement, and not necessarily the same folks all the time over and over again. And that's just my viewpoint on it. Thank you for your time and trouble.
Bill, do you have a comment, sir?
Mayor Morrison, members of the council, thank you for your service to the city. I'm one of those overdue members.
And you are Bill Dendle.
My name is Bill Dendle. I serve on the Tiers Committee. I'm one of those overdue members that's been there for a significant period of time. I'm hearing the comments from the public, and I appreciate Craig with WTOS and his work with the Tiers. They've been a great help to us. We are finally completing some projects in the north after a season of saving some money to where we could do some significant work. And I think you guys are seeing it between 6th and 14th, and it's our goal to continue toward from 14th to 18th with some additional funds that we have available at this point. Again, there are some members that have been overdue at this point, but in the grand scheme of things, we serve at the discretion of the council, and I don't know if you guys are actually reviewing your appointments on a regular basis or not. That would be. Yeah, evidently, that would be at the perusal of the council that they do that, that we do serve 2-year terms. So I have been in the position in sort of a duality of roles, with Single Member District 2 and also with SAISD. I'm not for sure that the other entities involved, the county, the ASU, Goodfellow, SAISD, are aware of their responsibility to review that position every 2 years also. So some of us senior members have been on there for a significant period of time. We have been able to maintain a certain amount of sustainability and continuity with some of the projects that have been ongoing and long-going, as Mr. Myers has mentioned, especially in the North Chadbourne Streetscape project. It takes a tremendous amount of money to start or complete a portion of those blocks, and the tax collection for each zone doesn't garner that within a year's period of time. So we also entertain outside projects, as we just have recently, and I think we've just upped our limits, especially in some of the areas, to a maximum of $75,000. But some of those projects aren't even touched by that amount of money. So there is a certain amount of credence to sustainability and also to continuity. But at this moment, I think the board has 3 positions that are vacant. And I couldn't tell you if it's a council member's position or a county position, ASU, SASD. So I'd really encourage the city to review that position, because without that sustainability, we wouldn't be able to obtain a quorum to even meet. So there are some underlying issues with the whole process. I think that a hybrid process of this would be something that could come out of this, where not that you have long-standing members, but at least that you have the opportunity to at least let one remain until a replacement can be found. And so I'm not saying that I'm ready to get off, but I certainly entertain the notion that somebody would really want to jump up there and serve in my position also, because I know there are several concerned citizens in San Angelo that are concerned about what happens regardless of the area, be it the river, downtown. We want to call it the north and the south zone. I'm not really hep on that term. It's all about San Angelo. It's not really about the north and the south, and those funds are separated, so they can only be spent in certain areas of the city. The money that's collected in the north is spent in the north. I didn't draw the lines. The money that's collected in the south is spent in the south. I don't draw those lines, but I'm opportunistic that I'm available to take part in a discussion that will spend money in a downtown area that I drive through every day, or on the river that I see every day, or down North Chadbourne that I drive down quite frequently also. So I'd really entertain the motions or notions from the council on how you can set this maybe on your calendar to review and to at least make us.
That gentleman's job right there.
As AJ pointed out, we had been in review of the members and which qualifications they meet regarding the restrictions of the creation of the members. We would recommend that maybe what I will do is I'll provide each of the council members with that ordinance so that you can look at the restrictions that are placed on who you can appoint there, because it did create quite a bit of confusion as we were reviewing, and it might be something that y'all would be interested in taking a look at, changing the wording so that it doesn't tie your hands quite as much as you start to replace those members.
Well,
Does
in
Bill have
reading
anything else?
what was provided in the packet and looking at the attendance record of all those that are currently on the board, I see that there's 2 vacancies. I don't know if 3, but it shows 2 vacancies. And it shows I don't even have an appointee on the Tiers board, which surprises me. I didn't know
Mr.
that.
Allen has recently resigned, and that may, Mr. Allen has recently resigned.
Wasn't my,
that may be
okay, that
one of
would
the
be the
positions that's
third
now
one.
vacant.
Okay.
Is Bill's time up, or does he still have the floor? or-
Mine is actually
still
up.
has the
I
floor.
am up. So,
Ms. Farmer, that is part of what I was talking about. The way that it's restricted, there is not a representative for each member of council. That might be something that y'all definitely want to look at. There are
Because there's 8.
there
Bill,
are
did you
8.
have further comments,
There are
sir?
8.
No, not really. I just want to say that I serve at the discretion of the council, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming. and
I'm ready to
staying.
make a motion.
Do I have any further public comment on this? You're going to provide us
Yes,
some
and
updates on this?
And just to finish that thought, there are 8 appointees that you all have, and there is not a representative for each one of you. So I think it would be worth taking a look at. And yes, I will. I'll provide that. I'll provide that via email, and I'll also provide it in the Friday packet.
Yes. The composition of the board is governed under state law, cannot exceed 15. Each taxing unit has some authority to appoint. And so there may not be enough space for the city to have each council member have an appointment, but we'd have to take a look at it.
No, there is.
We can look
Yeah,
at
there
it.
is. I think there is.
Do you have a motion? Did you want to move?
Yes, I
I'm going
wanted.
to second it once he says
I'm going to make a motion that we pursue or begin pursuing reappointment/replacement of current members. That's my motion.
Can I add-
Option-
can I-
Option 3.
Can I ask that you
As-
consider an amendment to your motion?
Yes.
Where we reject the idea of unlimited terms?
Yes, yes.
Well, is it part of the motion?
And I want to add that we do not want the without limits at all. So option 3 is what I'm going for, without limits.
Second.
To add.
Do have a motion, I do have a second. We've had discussion from council, is there any more? We've had public comment, is there any more? I'll call for the vote. The motion has been that we reject, we reject the ability for people to serve continuously without replacement, and that we review the restrictions and the amendments and the ordinance.
What?
Dan?
The agenda is for a recommendation, so you're not actually
Denied.
adopting a change.
We're recommending.
We are
recommending.
recommending.
Right.
You'll recommend that?
I am recommending
And you
that all day
recommend
long.
that?
Absolutely.
It has been recommended.
You could do it just by consensus, yeah.
So we don't need to vote on
Okay,
it?
but now we need to vote on,
We've already got a motion, we're gonna have to vote on it.
You can,
I'm recommending.
Recommendation.
Yes.
It's all been recommended. All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to the recommendation, say nay. The recommendation has been approved. Rick says we need to get 15 real quick. How quick?
2 minutes.
Okay,
including your vote.
discussion. Consideration of petition seeking annexation to San Angelo city limits of certain properties situated immediately south of San Angelo, generally located south of Loop 306 and east of Knickerbocker Road, specifically described as approximately 5.850 acres out of land out of the Casper Berberich Survey 177, abstract number 52, and Heinrich Zerbach Survey 178, Abstract number 4210, City of San Angelo, Tom Green County, Texas, being out of a certain 54872 tract described and recorded. Instrument number 201500372. Official public records, Tom Green County, Texas, and said 5.850 acre tract, more particularly described by meets and bounds in Tom Green County, Texas. Ms. Guerra.
All right, this is the Bentwood annexation. It's almost 6 acres. It's south of Loop 306 and east of Knickerbocker Road. It is in the ETJ, and if annexed, will likely be put into single-member district number 1. Future land use designation of this site is neighborhood, and in fact, the plans for the developer are to combine this with the existing Bentwood development. So you can likely see houses being built in this area, but this area is specifically going to be used for roadway and for drainage. Perhaps some housing, but you can expect this to be utilized, again, mainly for drainage or roadways. You can tell this is in the ETJ. It is adjacent to RM1 and RS1 zoning. This is the approved annexation plan. It is determined as intermediate on that approved annexation plan. This is the copy of the major thoroughfare plan and the utility map. These maps are both provided in your staff reports. The action requested is to accept the petition to annex and to accept the indicated schedule of hearings. This would be scheduled hearing number 1 out of 5 anticipated hearings. This concludes staff's presentation.
Is this yours, Rodney?
Yes, it is.
You want to
I
go
move to
one way or the other?
accept this- Move to accept as presented.
Rodney accepts. Charlotte seconds. Comment council? Comment public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. 7-0 vote. Let's go to lunch. Executive session. Executive session under the revision of Government Code Title 5, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. Section 5510711A, to consult with attorney with the governmental body seeks the advice of its attorney about pending or complicated litigation regarding Marta for Hurstville Energy Systems, LLC, ETAL. Section 55107.2, deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property pertaining to potential sites for a police department administration building. 12:32, we ought to be back in an hour.
30 minutes.
Okay, we'll be back.
30 minutes.
We'll be back in 30 minutes if possible, and if an hour if not possible. 12:32, Brian. It is 1:12. Let's call the meeting back to order. Number 17 on the agenda, consideration of authorizing the city manager or his designee to negotiate and execute a personal services contract and related documents with Muniservices LLC for hotel occupancy tax audit services. Tina Benell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We are definitely due for another hotel occupancy tax audit. It's been about 4 years since we did our last one, and the statute of limitations is 4 years for those audits, and so we'd really like to get this underway and get it started. Some of the benefits, of course, are to maximize revenue, increase compliance, and, of course, education of hoteliers, and the goal would be to capture any unrealized revenue. So some common mistakes, and these aren't always intentional, of course, but there's mistakes with exemptions and, incomplete records, miscalculation, just failure to keep accurate records, things like that. And so, like I said, it can go back 4 years. We propose to fund this with the proceeds of hotel occupancy tax for the time being, and then to reimburse that with any excess revenue that's found by the audit. The previous audit in 2010 yielded $76,000 in additional revenue from 29 hotels. And then there's also the possibility of a finder's fee of 20% from the state if we find any tax revenue that should have been remitted to them and wasn't. So that's pretty much all there is to it. We're asking for authorization for city manager to negotiate and execute that contract with Muniservices.
And what is the cost of it?
The cost is proposed at $1,700 a flat fee per hotel that's chosen. We are requesting a not-to-exceed amount of $40,000, so to get as many hotels that they think are high risk within that amount.
And it's required?
Pardon me?
And you said it's required every 4 years?
It is not required. We think it's best practice because of the fact that there's a statute of limitations of 4 years. So if we do it every 4 years, we can capture that, on a 4-year rotation.
Okay. I'm
Anything
sorry.
that we would have missed.
Misunderstood you.
That's okay.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do have a motion from Elizabeth. I'll take Johnny's second on it. Do I have any further council discussion?
Can Can I pull my second and ask Lucy to second it?
No.
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 Okay, all right.
Do I have public comment on this item?
Warming up.
Motion has been made. Do we accept? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. You got Lucy on that.
I was going to say nay, just so he'd have to be happy.
All right, we now have number 18, which is discussion and any action thereto regarding the annual fee review. Morgan Chegwidden.
Good afternoon. What we have before you today is the final group of folks who are recommending changes to their fees. So today we're going to talk about permits and inspections and planning. We will continue to bring back to the council after today's discussion. We'll wrap up, of course, the initial by consensus discussions, but we will continue to bring the adoption and any ordinances related to implement those fees. So we expect that this will be a continuing discussion. As discussed last time, that this is part of the revised process for fee review. And here we are on track for June to talk about development services, specifically planning and permits and inspections. So if it's the council's pleasure, we can dive right into this. We have planning scheduled first, and of course I have key staff available to answer any specific questions, and I can go over the financials if you like. What we have here is step-by-step the estimated cost of service for each of the proposed items, and then we will go on to the financial impact of the proposed items and the survey of peer cities of the proposed items. And so we can go through these one by one if it's the council's pleasure how we want to move through them.
Everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah.
You're saying them?
So to begin with planning, we have easement release at an estimated cost of service of over $609. The current fee is $37.50. We're proposing that fee go to $150. For the variance administrative, the current cost of service, and if I may, the cost of service, of course, is related to labor and staff time spent on it and any supplies used to provide the service. So the variance administrative, the estimated cost of service is almost $170 at a current fee of $50, proposed to go to $75. For administrative replats, the estimated cost to provide that service is almost $405, a current fee of $212.50, proposing to go to $250. The next item is conditional use with an estimated cost of almost $385, at a current fee of $353, proposed to go to $375. The next item is final plat at a cost of over $445, a current fee of $312, proposed fee of $350. We'll continue with the estimated cost of service with a replat, for example. Again, that cost of service of $445, current fee $312, proposed fee $350. The next item there is rezoning for planned development with an estimated cost of service of $609, current fee of $547, proposed fee of $600. Preliminary plat of $495 is the cost to provide that service. The current fee is $337. We would recommend moving that up to $400. The right-of-way abandonments, estimated cost of service, again, very comparable to other items you've seen of $609. The current fee is $434. We would propose bumping that up slightly to $450. Street name changes, again, a cost of service of $609, current fee of $208.75, proposed to increase that to $250. Again, continuing with the estimated cost of service, we have special use, again with that same cost of service of $609, the current fee of $378, proposed to go to $400. The next item there is variance sign ordinance. The estimated cost of service is almost $385, current fee of $168.75, proposing to increase that to $200. The next item is variance zoning ordinance. Again, very comparable with a cost of $385, current fee of $225, proposing to go to $250. Under rezoning with a cost of $609, a current fee of $460, proposed of $500. These next few items we'll go through, we currently do not charge a fee for. We're recommending implementing a fee. For DHRC review, a cost to provide that service of $385. Again, a current fee of $0, proposing to implement $100. The next item, comprehensive plan amendments, it costs us an approximate $570.75. The current fee, of course, is zero. We're not currently charging for that function. We would propose charging $500. The next item related to annexations, it approximately cost us $1,534.36. We'd recommend implementing a new fee of $1,000 for those items. And the last item before you is zoning verification letters. It costs us about $73 to provide that function, and the proposed fee would be to implement something at $25. And with that, we have the financial impact of each item. The total financial impact, as indicated in your background, would be, if all of these fees were implemented for a normal year like the one we just experienced, would be a increased revenue of $12,579.25. And here is the detail on each of those. You'll see the volume, for example, of a replat at that marginal revenue would yield $1,026. Each of those are outlined here before you. The next area we have to go over is the survey data related to planning, and you'll see here the proposed fee for each of these items and then what our peer cities are charging. And we compared us to Abilene, Midland, Odessa, Wichita Falls as a starting point to develop what we looked like side by side with those other communities. For example, easement release, we're proposing a fee of $150, as you've seen. The survey data is showing that other communities are charging $100 to $400, so certainly within what other groups are charging. Variance administrative, that's one where we're proposing $75. However, the data we have on peer cities is that they're charging $200. So we have each of those available. We're well within what other folks are charging for each of these. For comprehensive plan amendments, we didn't find that other cities really charge a fee in that way, so we had no data to report for that one. And if it's the council's pleasure, we can stop and talk about planning specifically now, or we can move on to permits and continue with the presentation.
Continue with the presentation. Does everybody do you have questions?
I wouldn't mind just stopping at planning for a minute. I think that when you look honestly at the cost of service versus what you're proposing or where we are now, in the grand scheme of a development, $100 it's $100, but it's a negligible amount in the overall development. I would like to see us get to, on these fees, exactly the cost of service, because otherwise residents in our community are essentially underwriting that, and there's no need for that. These are all discretionary type costs, so I don't see any need for a taxpayer completely uninvolved in this to be underwriting that. That's a cost of doing business. I don't think as long as we keep them related to the cost of our service that they're in any way inflated or non-defensible. That's my personal feeling.
I agree.
We voted on this last month on the other services that we were talking about, and I think that I agree with Liz entirely on this, that we should continue, but I think that we should increase it slowly, like we said we would the last time. But I think once we get at that point, I think we should tie this somewhere to a cost of living index or something like that, and do a yearly change instead of doing this. I think it's been over 10 years for most of these changes without a single change. And that's not how the real world is. Pretty much every year things go up a little bit.
Right. I think, Mayor, we're close enough on some of these that we could look at just going ahead and, to me, going 100%.
Yeah.
I like the incremental increases. I mean, it's not our citizens' fault that we got in this situation.
No, but
and I might add that also yesterday tax reappraisals went out to our citizens, and these things have gone through the roof. I mean, our citizens can only take so much, and by taking, I understand a small incremental, and we'll do this yearly, and then over the span of a couple of years, we'll be able to get it to where we want it. But I am very much opposed to a big, huge increase like this. Charlotte?
Well, I agree, we agreed to do it in incrementals, but if you look at conditional use, the cost is $384.96, current fee $353. The proposed fee is $375. I agree we should take it to the $385 because of the mere cost of bringing it back and talking about it again. It's just such a small amount. The others, I agree with.
I wouldn't have a problem to go from 375 to 384.96 on that one.
Okay, that's fine too.
But when you're talking about going from 3750 to 150 to 609.36 on the easement, that's too much. And I don't mind in reason, but we need to remember these are our citizens, and the citizens that pay this are the same citizens that have to pay everything else. And I don't want to hit them like this. Take it in increments and make it so that they can digest it instead of.
Mayor?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
down here. That's exactly opposite of what's happening, though. These are generally borne by the development community or someone undertaking a project. It's our citizens that are underwriting the differential in the cost of that service and what we're collecting. So I'm trying to take it off the backs of the citizens and not put it on them. Exactly. As I said, they're all discretionary. Do you want to go for an easement release and have half of your alley or something? Then pay for it and pay for the process in which our staff are going through to process and review that and bring it to council. I don't think there's anything unreasonable. I think it's actually more fair to the general citizen.
Our goal is to get it to the cost of service. That is our goal. Our ultimate goal is to get it there.
We'll never get there if we continue to wait.
Well, and I agree with her, even if you look at the variance, going from $50 to $75 when the actual cost is $169.90, it's going to take forever and cost more time to bring it up. If there is that much to take it to what the estimated service is, I think we should change it now, the full amount. The rest of them, when you look at 609 to 3750, the proposed fee, 150, it's going to take us several years to get it up to the actual cost if we don't do a larger increase now. And as she said, those are going to the developers. The people are coming in to develop, buy some land, make some changes. This takes it off of the backs of our citizens.
But I would ask, who is the final person in line for a developer? Because that developer has to develop it, he has to build it, he has to sell it, and the citizen is the one that's finally getting stuck for all of these additional charges. I don't have a problem with raising them incrementally, but I do have a problem with taking them. And also, I would say this estimated cost of service, this is kind of an arbitrary number too. And possibly if we are lower, possibly we could increase our services or our output, maybe we could bring our costs down. I think that would be an incentive to lower cost than to just pay it up front. I'm opposed to this. I'll accept your proposal, but I'm not in favor of any more.
I have a comment. I believe it was that first one you showed where you talked about, it was something like an estimated cost of $1,000. Go, one more.
Annexations? No, that's all of them.
Okay. Well, there was one where it was a large estimated cost, and you said that a lot of that had to do with labor. So explain to me how.
All of these, the estimated cost of service for each of these items, there's an estimate for the amount of time that each staff person who touches it spends on it. So for example, the planner, the planning manager, the director, an admin assistant, really anybody who's involved in making this service be provided to the customer. Mm-hmm. That is what's included in it.
But aren't we already providing a salary to that staff person? I mean,
oh, sure. And then that's not going to change that. This is just to recoup that we're paying a salary and benefits, and we're trying to recoup what, if we were to charge customers, what it costs to provide the service. That's what that estimated cost of service is intended to portray.
I find that hard to swallow. Throwing in the labor cost in there.
No, Johnny, basically what we're saying is at this point for the cost of service, for the cost that we're providing the service, we're actually in the hole. Yeah. We're falling in the hole, and what we're trying to do is make up to make sure that we're at least at a break-even point, which is what Liz is talking about, is to get us to at least a break-even point. which our whole goal from the very get-go when we start reviewing our fees is to make sure that we do get to that point where we are providing or at least charging for our cost of service. And that's basically what this is about, to make sure that we're not in the hole any longer, or at least that we're moving toward removing the red that we're in.
So is it fair to say, like Elizabeth said, the developer is getting stuck with this bill? I mean, I think at the tail end.
The customer for these services is the developer.
I think getting stuck is the wrong word.
Yeah.
It's
just a cost.
You know,
paying
in
for
my
what they
in my business, when we perform a service work, we charge for that labor because we've got to be reimbursed for it. And it's the same thing with the city. If Al's out there doing a particular service for an individual or a company, they need to reimburse the city for his services. And you pay to play whatever it is, and you got to pay for those services, and then you say the developer passes it on to whoever buys that particular lot. Well, he does, but he can only pass on as much as the market will bear, and so it all works out in the end. I mean, I understand your view, Mayor, but I think, you know, if we're going to try to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money, we have to pass those services on.
Right.
I mean, pass that cost on.
Mayor, do you feel that some of
Let's
these
get
are
Charlotte.
incremental anyway? I mean, these are sort of incremental.
I'm not against the proposed fee. I'm not opposed to taking it a step at a time, but I'm opposed to all of it. Charlotte?
Mr. Mayor, I want to make the motion that we approve the fees as presented with the exception of the final plat, various, and condition use, and those fees go to the cost of services, and then the easement fee, since that's such a large gap, the 609, that we take the proposed fee to 300.
Okay, now which ones are you changing? You're going with proposed fees, except.
What she has presented there with 4 different changes. On the final plat, the variance, and conditional use, I would like to see her take those to the cost of services. And on the easement fee that we're looking at on the top, the estimated cost is $609. We charge $37.50. She's proposing $150. I propose we take it to an even $300, which is about half of what the actual cost is, to keep it from being such a large jump.
I'm so sorry. Let me make sure I have this. The final plat would go to cost of service.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, which
Variance and conditional use
Can you explain how you?
to go to cost of service. Take variance to $169.90, conditional use to the $384.96, and the final plat, take it to $445. That way, you've closed some gaps, but, and you don't you don't reuse your time over and over again to bring it back to us, and we close some of these gaps sooner.
And then easement would go to 300, and the
Yes.
rest would be as presented.
Yes.
Charlotte, do you want to round those off to an even number, either up or down?
I like even numbers. It's much easier. The 384.96, take it to 385.
I suggest you put that in your motion.
Yes, that is in my motion.
So you're saying to accept the proposed fees with the exception of those 4?
Yes, sir.
Adjusting them.
Yes, sir. And if nobody likes it, they can come up with their own proposal.
Can you explain how you selected those so that we understand your
I
reasoning?
selected them simply by looking at the amounts that are on there. If you look at variance, okay, $170 is the cost. We're charging $50. She had $75. That's just a $25 difference that she's, like I said, takes the time, the paperwork, and to adjust and bring it back to us. If she'd go ahead and go to the $170 now. I'm looking at it in the dollar amounts, the conditional use. There's $385 is what it's costing them proposing to go into 375. Why not go to 385 now?
I'd try to go to the full cost of service. I think every time we touch this, we have money invested in it.
Are you leaving the other ones alone?
I'm leaving the other ones as she is proposing for the proposed fee that she is proposing. I'm leaving those alone. And that was my motion.
Anybody want to second her motion?
I'll second.
And I might also just add, I talked to a man yesterday that was laid off of his job. They've laid off everybody except a skeleton crew. All of those that had been promoted have been demoted, and all of those that stayed had taken a 20% cut in pay if they wanted to keep their job. This is the wrong time to be taking very serious increases because our citizens are the ones that's having to bear the brunt of this. I don't have a problem with what Charlotte has proposed because she's just hit forward and the rest of them have gone to proposed. But I do have a second. I do have a motion. Do I have any further council discussion on this? Do I have any public comment on this? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Put a 5-2 on it then.
Morgan,
Number 9.
Morgan, are you clear with all those changes? That she
Yes, sir. We do also have permits and inspections before you for consideration to move through those. For permits and inspections, the estimated cost of service for building permit residential is $249.67. I will say that the estimated cost of service, as we developed it for all the other fees, you can get a pretty good ballpark for what that is. As it relates to permits and inspections, that it really varies greatly depending on each individual service that's provided. So for example, a building permit residential for one customer may require a much different workload than a building permit residential for another customer just because of re-inspections and different things. And so we do have an estimated cost of service, and it is just that, an estimated cost. So building permit residential at an estimated cost of almost $250. The current fee is $25, et cetera, at 10 cents a square foot, et cetera. The proposed fee is to go to $50 at 12 cents per square foot, et cetera. That's in your background. The building permit commercial, the estimated cost of service is $562.74, proposing something very comparable here, that the current fee of $50 go to $75 plus the additional amounts. Occupant change for building and fire inspection, that the cost to provide that service is $77. We're proposing to go right there at $75. The commercial partial temporary occupant, the cost to provide that service is almost $104. The current fee of $50 going to a proposed flat fee of $75. The residential partial temporary occupancy, the cost to provide that service is $65, proposing to go to $50. The extension request for a temporary certificate of occupancy, we're currently not charging for that. We would recommend that implementing a fee of $100 as that is supported by the cost of service. The street use, we currently charge a fee of $25. We would propose a $35 fee for that. The street use cost to provide that service is just under $35. Similarly, for the street closure permit, and then on to the voucher, the cost to provide that service is almost $24. We're proposing to charge $20. Electrical permit, proposing to go to $35, very close to that cost of service. Plumbing inspections, the cost to provide that service is $47.60. We would propose $35. Mechanical permits, the cost to provide that is almost $40. We would recommend to go to $35. The inspections after 4:30 p.m., that costs us about $95.96 to provide. We would propose the $84 plus the additional language there. And those are the costs of service. To get into the financial impact, the total, if all of these were implemented, the financial impact would be, $122,425. And you'll see that the financial impact for each of those is listed here.
Real quick.
And could you go back to the last set of fees before I made a motion on the other? To me, those are the ones that affect your consumer, your customer out there that do things.
And they're not that far off of the actual cost, so that's not where we're hemorrhaging, if I can use that word.
And I'll make a motion to accept the proposed fees as presented on this last go around.
Somebody want to second it?
I just knew you would.
I'll second it.
Also,
Marty, do you have something?
I wanted to share something.
I'd like
Go
to
ahead.
discuss
You
after.
may. With respect to the commercial and residential fees, we worked very closely with the Home Builders Association. They actually established their own roundtable to provide feedback and guidance to us with respect to the residential permit specifically. And then subsequently, we convened a group of commercial developers, in addition to some folks from the Home Builders Association, to help us establish a framework for the fees related to commercial activity. So this was very much vetted through the development community, and they've helped us to get to the point where we are today. So it wasn't certainly done in a vacuum at all. We feel very comfortable with the numbers that we presented, and there should have been a letter in your packet from the Home Builders Association, at least at a minimum, that talked about their endorsement of the residential fees. If not, certainly we can provide that to you, but certainly the Home Builders Association provided actual copy of a letter endorsing the increase in the fees. So if you have any questions about that, I can.
Not about the letter, but
Let's get Elizabeth's waiting. Let's have Elizabeth, and then you got yours.
I feel the same way about this that I did the other fees. I think with the exception of the actual inspection costs, I think those are pretty much in line with our cost of service. I think that we need to go, I'll just say, I think we need to get to the actual cost of service. I think we are, at one point, and you don't have them up anymore, so I'm kind of talking in the wind here, but like on the residential and the commercial permit, what you're proposing still doesn't even get us to, well, it's right at 20%. We'll never get to an actual cost of service at this rate. And so I think that what we're doing here is not really serving, again, the individual that could be on a fixed income and is not building something new. They're just trying to live. We're actually asking them to subsidize this, and I think that's wrong.
Marty?
I guess I'm kind of wondering how we got to a cost of service that costs $250 and when we're charging $25.
Because nobody wants to go up.
We're not charging $25. The $25 is the way the costs are shown now in the ordinance. It's $25 plus 10 cents a square foot.
Okay.
So a typical permit ends up costing about $300 or so, depends on the size of the house, et cetera. That's for heated square footage. That's what that little plus symbol, that's what she said, it's real hard to determine the actual number. It's $25 base fee plus 10 cents a square foot. We are proposing that the base fee change from $25 to $50 plus the 10 cents a square foot is going to 12 cents a square foot. The letter that Patrick was referring to that the home builders were looking at, they recommended that we go to 15 cents a square foot. But again, in looking at actual cost of service and what other cities were doing, we decided to keep it at 12 cents. So an actual permit at this level, $50 plus would probably get us to about that cost of service. Now, that's not reflected in that chart because, 25 plus, it's kind of hard to see that.
So you feel that on the building permit for residential and commercial that we're actually getting to that rate?
That's correct.
That's very, very misleading, Al.
It is.
Yes.
That is extremely misleading. Because that doesn't say anything what she just said.
I'm sorry, it was difficult to fit in the presentation, but it is in the background that the proposal is to go to the $50 plus.
So it's
12 cents per square
$25
foot.
plus 10 cents a foot, which actually is going to be what it cost us.
That is correct.
It looks like it's a difference of $200 some odd dollars, but yet it's actually even.
That is correct. And
That's misleading.
In the original chart that should be in your background, it shows all of the different breakdowns.
So I'm ready to vote now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm ready.
Vote
I
on that
think
one.
we need to stay with the original price instead of going to proposed, if that's the situation. Because if we go up $25 and go up 2 cents, we're actually going to be charging them more than what it cost.
But we have a motion and a second.
Well, then we can work on that. But you said that if we stayed at 25 plus 10%, it would actually bring in more money than cost of service, and you want to go to 50 plus 12%.
He said the 50 plus would get us.
12 would bring us.
I thought you said that 25 plus 10 would get us right to cost.
I don't, right, no, the new dollars will get us right about to cost.
Okay, and I see it is in the background. It's in about the 30th page of the background,
And
but it is there.
And Mayor, I might mention again, all of these fees were discussed by the Home Builders Association, and they endorsed this, and they sent a letter saying so. So those are fees that they reviewed on their end and brought forward to us. It's not something that staff just came up with.
But these are residential. This is not just builders. These are people that's trying to add on to their house, people that's trying to add a garage. These are residents that comes in. So this is not just builders and developers. And I don't appreciate the way you put that in there when you took out the 10 cents per square foot. That's very, very misleading.
That was our intention, including it in the background, because it is quite a cumbersome process to work through this fee review.
It's a formula.
And in your defense, it's there.
Thank you for your explanation.
So my motion still stands, is to accept the proposed changes by staff.
stands.
Been made, the motion has been made, it has been seconded. Any public comment on this? Call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Put me down as a nay. 2 nays.
Morgan, you did a fine job explaining that. I know that the information's in the background, and we appreciate that. So thank you for that, okay?
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you, Al, for clarifying.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Number 19, discussion and possible action regarding regulation of sexually oriented businesses. Councilwoman Farmer.
Yes, I need some questions answered. I asked a council member and some staff members, and nobody knew exactly, so I'm going to look at the code enforcement folks and the legal to clarify if we in San Angelo currently have an ordinance that prevents a business that is sexually oriented from operating within the city limits of San Angelo.
No, we have a regulatory ordinance. We can't prohibit what the courts define as First Amendment establishments altogether. We can limit through zoning, which we do, with 1,000 and 500-foot distance requirements. We can also, to some degree, regulate under the state code, which we don't do with the aspect of requiring a permit to operate. A permit might set certain standards for an operation, like how many employees they have to have per square foot, what kind of observation they have to do, what kind of health and safety inspections, they might be subject to, et cetera. So we regulate location, and under our regulations, there's probably a very, very limited number of potential locations, especially when you get closer to the core area. And that's probably reflected in the number of sexually oriented businesses that currently exist. But if you get into a major commercial area where there's no churches, residences, parks, and that type of thing, say a shopping center, the potential is there. But under any ordinance, like we couldn't say you have to be 1,000 feet from any telephone pole. I mean, that we can't adopt regulations that eliminate all potential locations for those kind of businesses.
Okay. I'm looking at Ms. Grindstaff because I discussed it with her because I consider her my zoning and guru on this. And the question being that I assumed that the city of San Angelo had an ordinance that did not require the sale of X-rated materials, videos and stuff within the city limits of San Angelo. And numerous people thought that, but what you just told me is that's not so.
Right. What you're talking about is whether or not that would qualify the business as a sexually oriented retail sale business, then it would come within the parameters of the zoning regulations that it has to be certain distances from other kinds of developments.
Okay. Then I'm going to just be even more explicit. How does that cover and entail the filming of X-rated videos in a business, where the location of that business?
You would be talking about an activity, and that would depend on whether or not the actual filming or let's just call it the exposure, the sexually oriented aspect of it, was like open to the public and being dispensed at that time, or if it was something that was being privately created but not dispensed at that location and not a public entertainment thing at that location.
Then all that's required is a state permit to do the business?
Well, I don't believe there's a state permit that's required. There are penal code provisions that could come into play depending upon, what takes place.
Charlotte, and we do have, of course, Rebecca did her research pertaining to the regulations that we have on our books that deal with sexually oriented businesses. And she's here to present that information as well to make sure that we're clear on what that regulation is as well.
I would like to be clear.
Okay.
Yes, sir. No, sir. No, sir.
Please.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Supreme Court has dictated that any legal or lawful use cannot be prohibited by any municipality. The City of San Angelo's zoning ordinance, when it established the following use, adult entertainment enterprises / sexually oriented businesses, it created 8 sub-use categories within that use. So the big use is called adult entertainment enterprises / SOBs, and then 8 categories contained there within. Within those 8 categories, nowhere within those 8 categories does it talk about the filming of individuals in a partially or fully unclothed state on private property. So the state of Texas, currently through the Texas Commission of Film, which is under the governor's office, does not require a permit for any filming done on private property, regardless of the state of undress or lack thereof of any individual, as long as on private property and by consensual adults. On state property or public property, a permit is required. So, to summarize, there is no permit required per the state of Texas, nor is there a permit with Tom Green County, nor is there a permit with the City of San Angelo. And as long as the practices are being done on private property by consensual adults, are not available to the public for their enjoyment, they may proceed without having to obtain a permit, and it will be consistent with the zoning ordinance of the city.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, your answer to me is if I receive, and I did, a constituent complaint of adult filming activities going on at an office, a location downtown, they're perfectly legal.
The state of Texas doesn't require a permit. We don't require a permit, and as long as it's by consensual adults over the age of 18 on private property, no permit is required, nor is it regulated by the zoning ordinance.
It's a tough question to answer to someone when you really don't know.
Sure.
And you may not, I may not morally agree to it, but it's a question that more than 1 or 2 people have heard and gotten the same rumors of a business downtown here, and I couldn't answer it. So it's been answered for the public. I feel like I've done what I can do to advise where our limitations are in authority.
Yes,
if that is correct, that's all I needed.
Let's move on.
Rebecca, you handled that very well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rebecca, very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Number 20 is consideration of and possible action on matters discussed in executive closed session if needed. There was nothing in the one that I attended. Was there anything on the other one?
No, we're good.
Nothing needs to be
No,
said?
sir.
Number 21 is consideration of approving various board nominations by council and designated council members. Construction Board, Chris Cornell, SMD 5, to an unexpired term, February 2/16.
Move to approve.
Second.
Do I have a motion to approve and a second? Further council discussion? Do I have discussion from the public? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Put a 7-0 on it. Number 22 is announcements, consideration of future agenda. Start with you, Elizabeth.
I don't have any agenda items. I think in our packet this last week, we did get some information on our requests and where they are, and I really do appreciate that. I think it's very helpful. Okay. Just a reminder that I have a neighborhood chat on June 22nd that's going to be at St. Mark Presbyterian, and James Flores and Bob Salas will be our featured guests to talk about animal control, code enforcement, and anything else that's on our residents' minds.
Lucy, did you have anything, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
Listen up, Johnny.
Listen up, Johnny.
What I'm wanting to propose or try to find out is if it's possible for us to look into the possibility of getting welcome signs in our entrance, point of entrance in our city, like the signs that say "Welcome to San Angelo," not a post, not a billboard or anything, but actually a sign. That's what I'm wanting to see.
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Charlotte?
Well, yes, I need some information, not necessarily a future council, but if staff could look, one, in our permit and planning, whenever a commercial business is building and they're required to do a retention pond, if that retention pond completion is before the construction, after the construction, and who follows up to see that that's been done. We've had a lot of commercial building out in my part of the area that retention ponds are required, and they've not been completed, and I need someone to follow up and look at that for me. Another thing is, I know we don't get rain too often, but we sure are thankful when we get it, and I'm not complaining. However, stormwater, a lot of landscaping that go to the rocks or the crushed granite or the gravel or whatever, if they're not contained some way in a border in the yard, they're out in the street and intersections, and now water can't flow because there's a half foot of gravel and rock, et cetera, and so forth. If somebody could look at how maybe we could prevent that in the future or a simple way, I would appreciate it. And the other item is I had asked Daniel that look at how we handle our siren situation, and I visited with you Friday with reference to maybe a challenge as to how to come up with a dial that the citizens can dial 3 numbers and get a recording as to whether it's high wind, a tornado, or hail. Right. And I would like to see Anthony or Brian come up with a 723, that's San Angelo emergency, that's SAE, or a 342 emergency information activation, which they would get a recording automatically when they hit those numbers that said there is a tornado, and that takes calls off of our 911 and helps the citizens communicate that maybe their TV antenna's been blown down or something of that nature. If someone could look into that for me.
We have a presentation on that item next city council meeting, Charlotte, and we'll include a topic on that, okay?
That's all I have.
Okay. Johnny, do you have anything, sir?
Just a final reminder of town hall meeting for myself and Daniel and company, 6 o'clock Thursday, St. Mary's Catholic Church Gymnasium.
Marty?
None at this time.
Rodney?
Just wanted to remind everybody to go to the petsafe.com and vote for the dog park. We need to get those votes, and we sure do need to get that money taken care of for the remainder. I would like us to get that last $15,000.
Yes, Marty.
I am declaring the drought officially over in San Angelo.
I would like to ask if Carl could make room in his schedule. Rick, don't shoot me. With reference to the dog park. You know, young Miss Megan has done a tremendous amount of work to keep this thing going alive and getting Amy, and look at what we could do, where we could do it, and maybe call it Megan's Park.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye. Aye. Meeting's over. There.